Will this really work? My elder sister stared helplessly as I threw the bamboo joint hairpin into the pond. Her face was a mixture of panic and hesitation. Why wouldn't it? I watched the ripples spread slowly across the water. Where the hairpin had sunk, the murky surface gradually cleared again. Only then did I turn around, forcing my voice to sound exactly like that of the meek, accommodating second young lady I had been in my previous life. You have never been calculating. You only know how to endure and give way. Once he is dead, naturally no one will ever know who injured him. My elder sister bit her lower lip, a thin sheen of tears covered her almond-shaped eyes. I knew what she feared. In my previous life, at this very time she had disguised herself as a man and secretly gone to meet someone. She did not return until half the day had passed. The moment she came home, she shoved the hairpin into my hand in a panic and said only, "I accidentally hurt someone with your hairpin." Then she hid in her room, pretended to be ill, and refused to come out. When I heard that she had injured someone, I was terrified that a life might be lost foolishly. I rushed at once to the place she described. Sure enough, I found a young man in plain clothes, lying unconscious in the woods on the mountainside. Blood from the wound in his chest had stained more than half the front of his robe. Startled, I took out the salve and bandages I carried, stopped the bleeding, bound his wound, and then used a carriage to take him back to the city for treatment. Thinking of what my elder sister had done, I feared that he might later pursue the matter and report it to the authorities. If that happened, the officials would certainly not spare the Lin family. So I tucked my own handkerchief into his robe, hoping that if we met again, I could use the favor of saving him to offset the harm she had caused. Who could have known that the impoverished-looking young man was none other than the current crown prince Li Xuan? Li Xuan had borrowed the identity of a newly successful scholar and left the palace in disguise. Halfway up the mountain, he somehow encountered my elder sister. A misunderstanding arose between them, and she stabbed him with the hairpin. Had I not treated him in time that day, night would have fallen while he lay in the cold mountains where wild beasts roamed. He might well have died there. That was why, later, to repay the debt of having his life saved, he followed the embroidered lotus and the character Lin on my handkerchief to my home and asked to marry me. After our marriage, Li Xuan treated me exceptionally well because he remembered that debt. The Eastern Palace never took a secondary consort or a court lady of rank. For a time, he and I truly lived in deep affection and happiness. Not long afterward, the late emperor died. Li Xuan ascended the throne and, as a matter of course, made me empress. My elder sister, meanwhile, had never known that Li Xuan was the man she had stabbed. Tormented by guilt and afraid that the injured man would come to her door seeking justice, she repeatedly urged the family to arrange her marriage and hastily wed the heir of the Marquis of Yongning. The Marquis's heir and my elder sister had grown up together. Their engagement had been arranged before her birth mother died by that lady and the Marquess of Yongning. The heir had therefore always been gentle and attentive toward her. Yet after their marriage, no one knew what happened. His attitude changed completely. He took one bedchamber maid after another, then one beautiful concubine after another. My elder sister cried and made scenes. When he grew tired of her scenes, he beat her. She returned home weeping and complaining. My parents wanted to support her, so they went together to Yongning Manor to demand an explanation. But by then our family's fortunes had declined greatly, and could not compare with an honored marquis household. At first the Marquess felt some guilt. After being troubled twice, however, she grew thoroughly disgusted. Later, whenever members of the Lin family came, she would not even have the gates opened. Only after I married into the Eastern Palace did the Marquess and her son abandon their former arrogance and begin treating my elder sister more gently. But her health had already been permanently damaged when the heir beat her and caused her to lose the child she was carrying. It was then that she learned I had become crown princess because I had saved Li Xuan, and she could not help regretting her choices. Another year passed. I became pregnant and gave birth to a prince. According to court etiquette, mother entered the palace to visit me. My elder sister, who had avoided me for a long time, unexpectedly followed her inside. The moment she saw Li Xuan, she burst into tears and claimed that she had been the one who saved him on the mountainside years ago. At first, Li Xuan did not believe her. I also rebuked her for lying and explained that she had stabbed him with the hairpin, then refused to take responsibility, so I had gone up the mountain in her place to save him. But my elder sister said that the bamboo joint hairpin had been the coming-of-age gift mother made for me. Therefore, I was the one who had injured Li Xuan, while she was the one who saved him. My elder sister was named Lin Qingfu, While I was Lin Qinglan, the Fi Qingfu and the Heian Qinglan could both refer to lotus flowers, so the embroidery on the handkerchief alone could not clearly distinguish between us. I asked Mother to testify about who truly owned the bamboo joint hairpin. To my disbelief, Mother lied openly in front of me. She admitted that the hairpin had indeed been made for me, and that the artisan could confirm it, yet she still forced the credit for saving Li Xuan onto my elder sister. I was already extremely weak after childbirth. Overcome by fury, I fainted on the spot. When I woke, I learned that Li Xuan had agreed to let my elder sister separate from the heir of Yangning Manor. He had made her noble consort, and even taken my child from my arms to place him in her care. He told me, "All of this is what you owe your elder sister. If you had not stolen her credit back then, she should have become crown princess from the beginning, and the position of empress should also have been hers. You would have been the one married into Yangning Manor. You would have been beaten until you lost your child. Therefore, you must compensate your elder sister with a child." No matter how fiercely, I argued, it was useless. When my parents saw that the sovereign favored my elder sister, they also sided with her in everything. Mother repeatedly used visits to the palace as an excuse to persuade me. She urged me to give up the position of empress voluntarily and unite my elder sister with Li Xuan. I refused to let them have their way. I was the empress and had done nothing wrong. I had given birth to the crown prince and was renowned for virtue. Li Xuan proposed deposing me twice, but the court ministers stopped him both times. With no other method left, they secretly began placing a slow-acting poison in my food. By the time I discovered it, it was too late. I was gravely ill, and beyond saving, the palace maid, who served beside me, knelt and begged the imperial physicians to save my life, only to be told that the noble consort was suffering severe abdominal pain. Every imperial physician had already been summoned to her palace to await orders. That maid risked her life to run to my elder sister's residence. She knelt outside and begged her to spare a single physician to save me. Instead, Li Xuan and my own son, the crown prince, scolded her and drove her away. They called her insolent. They called me stubborn and unrepentant. They said that, knowing my elder sister was in poor health, I had still pretended to be gravely ill to steal her chance of survival. I died with my eyes open. Now that I had been given another life, I wished everyone who had harmed me could die at once. That was why I urged my elder sister to destroy the body and erase every trace of what she had done. Ching, my elder sister, tugged nervously at my sleeve. I did not see his face clearly. I only remember that his clothes were made of excellent fabric. So his family must have some status. If he truly dies, could our family be implicated? I sneered inwardly. In my previous life, she had thrown the hairpin at me as though tossing away a scalding hot potato. Had she ever once wondered whether the Lin family might be implicated then? Outwardly, however, I softened my voice and held her faintly trembling hand. "Do not worry, elder sister. If he could appear alone near Mount Dong without even one attendant, he cannot be anyone important." I leaned closer and whispered beside her ear, "Besides, if he were truly a powerful noble, why would he travel alone and allow someone to stab him?" My elder sister gradually relaxed. She even smiled as if a great weight had been lifted from her shoulders. "That makes sense. Then I will go home, and we can decide what to do later." She turned and left. The hem of her skirt brushed across the green moss on the stone step, leaving a damp streak behind. I remained where I was until her figure disappeared beyond the moon gate. Only then did I slowly crouch beside the pond and look at my distorted reflection in the water. The face in the pond was painfully young. The last traces of childishness still lingered between my brows and at the corners of my eyes, yet my gaze already held the coldness accumulated through 2 lifetimes. I had deceived my elder sister. I had not told her that, after I saved Li Xuan in my previous life, he had murmured a sentence while unconscious. The bamboo joint hairpin is evidence. After he returned to the palace following the attack, Xuan sent men from the eastern palace to search the entire city for that hairpin, but I had already destroyed it then. This time I would not destroy it. I wanted to see how Li Xuan would deal with my elder sister after he found the culprit. I stood, brushed several blades of grass from the hem of my skirt, and heard Mother calling my elder sister to come eat in the distance. Her voice was still as soft and gentle as it had been in my previous life. Yet all I could remember was the sight of her standing rigidly in Cunning Palace, pointing at me and saying, "Your elder sister was clearly the one who saved the crown prince, yet you stole the credit." There had not been even a trace of guilt on her face. My elder sister was the daughter of Father's late first wife. She shared no blood with Mother at all, while I was Mother's own daughter. Yet time after time, mother forced me to endure and yield. She had even wanted to seize my husband and my child and give them to my elder sister. Since she had never fulfilled her duty as my mother, she could not blame me for being an unfilial daughter. The still pond reflected half of the setting sun. I turned and followed the bluestone path home. In the end, my elder sister did not dare return to Mount Dong. She feared the mountain wind and the wild beasts in the woods, so all she could do was pray that Li Xuan would live or die on his own. Although she had always fought me for everything, she had never before stabbed anyone. After suddenly stabbing someone in the heart, she could hardly avoid feeling anxious. Mother noticed and asked, "Qingfu, why are you so restless? Are you feeling unwell?" My elder sister shook her head coldly. She had never liked Mother very much. Although Mother was the second wife, and had cared for her for more than 10 years after marrying into the Lin family, my elder sister rarely called her mother in front of outsiders. To preserve her reputation for virtue, Mother never held it against her. Instead, she treated her with even greater concern this time, when she saw that my elder sister could neither eat nor sleep, but stubbornly refused to explain why. Mother called me over after the meal. "Do you know why your elder sister is unhappy today? Did she take a liking to something of yours again, and you refused to give it to her?" I gave a faint, cold laugh and spread my empty hands. "Mother, look for yourself. Is there anything left on me? Whenever I possess something, don't you always take it back and give it to elder sister?" Mother's face stiffened at my words. After a long while, her expression darkened. "They are merely material possessions. Your elder sister lost her mother when she was young. Unlike you, she did not grow up with both parents. Naturally, I must treat her a little better. Being a stepmother is not easy. I once understood your difficulties, so whenever you told me to endure, I endured. But I never expected that, to play the part of a good stepmother, you would be willing to sacrifice even the life of your own daughter." I looked at her and asked abruptly, "Does elder sister hold some secret over you? Otherwise, why would you indulge her to this extent?" Mother's face immediately lost some color. The hand holding her teacup froze. A moment later, she angrily rebuked me. "Impudent girl, what nonsense are you saying? Your elder sister is the flesh and blood left behind by the late madam. If I treated her poorly, would the whole world not laugh at me and criticize me behind my back? You are my own daughter. If I favor you a little, outsiders will not see it, but if I mistreat her, the entire capital will condemn me as a cruel stepmother." Her explanation was seamless. It even carried precisely the right measure of wounded dignity for an elder contradicted by her child. I lowered my eyes and sneered inwardly. If Mother treated my elder sister well only to preserve her virtuous reputation, there were hundreds of other ways to do it. Why then had she insisted Cunning Palace in my previous life, that my elder sister was the person who saved the crown prince? She had clearly known that doing so would drive me to my death. Yet she had not hesitated. I had never understood it. But after seeing Mother's expression today, I finally grasped part of the answer. Perhaps my guess was right. My elder sister truly held something over her. "You are right, Mother." I smoothed my expression and made my voice obedient and gentle. I spoke out of turn. "Perhaps elder sister saw something ominous today, and was frightened. Have someone prepare a bowl of calming soup and take it to her later." Mother's expression eased. She reached out and adjusted several loose strands of hair beside my ear. "That is more like it. Your elder sister is aloof by nature and refuses to speak when something troubles her. As her younger sister, you should care for her and yield to her more." I nodded obediently, then used the opportunity to mention an old matter. "Mother, when I came of age, you considered several young men for me. I have thought about them carefully. Young Master Zhou, the son of the assistant prefect of Yangzhou, has good character and looks. Please decide this marriage for me." Mother paused, as though only then remembering that I had already reached marriageable age. She nodded. "It should have been settled long ago. Too many things have happened lately, and I neglected your marriage. In my previous life, she had considered more than 10 families for me. One had been too low in status, another not wealthy enough. She delayed again and again until Crown Prince Sichuan finally came to our door and said, 'I have no other way to repay the debt of having my life saved.' Only then had I married into the Eastern Palace. At the time, Mother held my hand with reddened eyes and said, 'I could not bear to have you marry far away. I meant to keep you beside me for another 2 years.' Who could have expected His Highness the Crown Prince to choose you? Only later did I learn that from the year I came of age, she had already selected the Zhou family in Yangzhou and was merely waiting for an auspicious day to arrange the engagement. Yet one sentence from my elder sister, 'Zhou is too far away. I cannot bear for King Lan to go so far,' had been enough to set the marriage aside. Yangzhou may be far, but it is prosperous and wealthy, I continued gently. An assistant prefect may only be a deputy official, but the Zhou family has been a scholarly household for generations and keeps upright family traditions. I would not suffer by marrying into it. Besides, don't you always say that, for a daughter, the most important thing is to marry into a decent family and live a stable life? Mother's face relaxed slightly, though she still frowned. Why did you suddenly remember the Zhou family? I mentioned them only casually that day even. I did not keep it in mind, yet you remembered. I lowered my eyes and smiled. My memory has always been good. Have you forgotten, Mother? I spoke lightly, but the hand holding her teacup stopped almost imperceptibly. Of course she remembered how good my memory was when we were young. Whenever my elder sister made a mistake or caused trouble, and dared not admit it, she blamed me. Only because I remembered exactly what I had said and done each day could I defend myself every time. Unfortunately, Mother always wanted to preserve my elder sister's dignity. Even when she knew I had been wronged, she blamed me for having such a good memory, yet failing to warn my elder sister sooner. That was when I understood that in Mother's eyes my memory existed to clean up my elder sister's disasters, not to prove my own innocence. Very well, Mother finally conceded. I will have someone send a letter to Yangzhou another day and settle the engagement with the Zhou family. Then she warned me, but Qinglan, your elder sister's marriage has not yet been finalized. Do not make too much of your own engagement or outsiders will gossip. I nodded, though inwardly I found it ridiculous. It was not that my elder sister had no engagement. She was simply always looking for a better match. Even though her birth mother had left her an engagement with the heir of Yongning Manor, she had never been satisfied with him. She complained that he had not yet passed the provincial examination, that although handsome, he lacked masculine resolve, and that a marquis household ranked below a duke's or an imperial prince's. She delayed until she was 19. Only after injuring someone did she hastily marry him. Naturally, I did not say any of that to Mother. She wanted to be a virtuous stepmother, so I would help her fulfill that wish. While I was thinking, an argument suddenly sounded outside. Mother's family background was inferior to that of Father's late first wife. Afraid that the servants would gossip, she always managed the household strictly. Hearing the commotion, she immediately demanded, "Who is shouting out there? What kind of disorder is this?" A maid hurried out to investigate and soon rushed back, breathless. "Madame, something terrible has happened. People from the Grand Princess's residence have come to our door, they say. Our second young lady quarreled with Princess Rongan outside the newly opened Five Flavors Pavilion this morning, and the two of them even fought. The second young lady loudly claimed that she was the future sister-in-law of the heir of Yongning Manor. Now the Grand Princess's people say they intend to bind her and take her away for punishment." "What?" Mother's eyes widened in shock. "Did you hear clearly? Qinglan fought someone?" This servant heard clearly. "The Grand Princess's people have already entered the courtyard." The maid nodded in panic. No one could blame Mother for refusing to believe it. Everyone knew that the second young lady of Vice Minister Lin's household was timid and easily bullied. She had always been the one others struck or scolded. How could she possibly start a fight? Furious and anxious, Mother pointed a finger at my face. She choked for a long time before finally forcing out a sentence. "What exactly happened? Where did you go this morning?" I lowered my head and deliberately pretended to be frightened. "I heard that Mother has had little appetite lately. The pastries from the newly opened Five Flavors Pavilion are said to be excellent, so I went there to buy some for you." There were many people waiting, and everyone had to stand in line. Just as my turn came, another young lady cut in front of me and took the last pastries. I lost my temper and argued with her. She asked whether I knew who she was. Afraid that she would use her status to suppress me, I said I was the future sister-in-law of the heir of Yongning Manor. Who could have known she was Princess Rongan? Mother was so angry that she could not speak. She pointed at me without knowing what to say. "I only meant to show you filial concern. I was not the one who started the trouble. I was simply unlucky enough to offend someone I could not afford to offend." Just as Mother prepared to go outside and deal with the Grand Princess's people, another maid rushed in. "Madam, something else has happened. Princess Consorting has also brought people to our door. She says a young lady from our family deliberately seduced Prince Ning and used a trip up the mountain to pray for blessings as an excuse to meet him secretly this morning. The princess consort insists that our family give her an explanation." All color vanished from Mother's face. The Grand Princess wielded immense influence throughout the capital under the Empress Dowager's favor. Prince Ning's residence belonged to the current emperor's own younger brother. a man notorious for his romantic affairs. Now both households had appeared at our door at the same time. One accused a Lin daughter of fighting and causing trouble, the other accused a Lin daughter of seducing a prince. Either charge could cost someone her life. Mother staggered back a step and stared at me. Terror, anger, and suspicion surged in her eyes as though she wanted to devour me alive. "Wretched girl, when did you begin seducing Prince Ning as well?" I raised my head, my eyes slightly red. "Mother, I am innocent. I have already explained the matter with Princess Rong, and as for Prince Ning's residence, I was clearly at the Five Flavors Pavilion this morning. The whole street can testify. I cannot be in two places at once. How could I have secretly met Prince Ning at the same time?" My words left Mother speechless. She shouted angrily. "If it was not you, who else could it have been?" I reminded her softly. "I am not the only daughter of the Lin family. There is still elder sister Princess Consort Ning only said that a daughter of the Lin family seduced Prince Ning. She did not say which daughter. I was fighting with Princess Ron this morning. If it was not me, only elder sister remains." Prompted by me, Mother finally thought of that possibility. She drew a sharp breath and looked toward my elder sister's courtyard before saying sternly, "Stay here. You are not permitted to go anywhere. I will meet the people from both residences first." She left so quickly that the hem of her skirt billowed behind her, carrying a cold draft. I did not obey. I followed quietly. The front courtyard was already crowded. The Grand Princess's representative was a neatly dressed senior nanny. A command plaque from the Grand Princess's residence hung at her waist, and 4 powerful matrons who performed heavy work stood behind her. Prince Ning's residence had sent a pale-faced eunuch, whose voice was thin and sharp. He held a handkerchief in one hand. This was Eunuch Liu, the chief steward of Prince Ning's household. Mother invited both representatives into the main hall. Although her face had recovered some composure, the trembling fingertips hidden within her sleeves betrayed her panic. "Nanny Jing, Eunuch Liu." Mother bowed. "May I ask why you have personally visited our humble residence?" Nanny Jing gave a cold laugh and raised her chin slightly. "Madam Lin, this old servant comes by order of the Grand Princess to ask how your household's second young lady intends to settle the matter of openly fighting Princess Rong'an outside the Five Flavors Pavilion today. The princess is of imperial blood." When she returned home, her hair was disheveled, and there were 2 fingernail scratches on her neck. Her Majesty the Empress Dowager was so distressed that she shed tears. She said that if the Lin household cannot provide an explanation, she will personally demand one. Mother grew paler by the moment. Before she could speak, Eunuch Liu interjected unhurriedly in his piercing voice. "Nanny Jing, please wait. Our matter is also urgent. Her Highness the Princess Consort has ordered this servant to ask which young lady of your residence accompanied Prince Ning up Mount Dong today, shared a pot of tea with him inside Guanyin Temple, and exchanged keepsakes with him." The moment Her Highness saw the keepsake, she became so furious that she smashed an entire set of blue and white porcelain from the imperial kilns. She said that if the Lin family does not send that young lady to confront her directly, she will enter the palace and asks Her Majesty the Empress to judge the matter. Pressed from both sides, Mother's forehead beaded with fine sweat. She turned to look at me, shock and doubt mingling in her eyes. "Eunuch Liu, there must be some misunderstanding. My second daughter was clearly at the Five Flavors Pavilion, buying pastries this morning. The entire street can testify. How could she have gone to Mount Dong with Prince Ning?" Eunuch Liu narrowed his eyes. "Oh, is Madame Lin suggesting that Her Highness the Princess Consort has falsely accused your household? I would not dare." Mother hurriedly lowered her head in apology. The families she normally associated with were no more exalted than Yongning Manor. She had never dealt with imperial relatives. She dared offend neither the Grand Princess's residence nor Prince Ning's residence. Unfortunately, father was attending court and had not yet returned. When the representatives of both residences began to lose patience, Mother could only grit her teeth and say, "Our Lin family has only 2 young ladies. Please sit for a moment while I summon them both. Once I question them, the truth will become clear." She immediately sent someone to call my elder sister. At first, my elder sister entered the front hall, wearing an impatient expression, unaware of what had happened. The moment she heard that Princess Consorting had sent people to our door, her face turned white. Even so, she stubbornly denied everything. "I do not know any prince. You must have mistaken me for someone else. The Lin family has 2 young ladies, as expected of my dear elder sister." I had always known that whenever she caused trouble, she would try to place it on my head. That was why, before exposing her secret affair with Prince Ning to Princess Consort, I had already prepared my own escape. I deliberately chose a time when Princess Rong'an was out for a stroll. I provoked a dispute with her and then fought her. I knew that Princess Rong'an had been born into incomparable privilege. Her mother was the current Grand Princess, and her maternal grandmother was the Empress Dowager. Since childhood she had been cherished beyond measure. Proud and domineering, she had never yielded to anyone. Sure enough, after fighting me, Princess Rong'an immediately returned home to summon reinforcements. Now the Grand Princess demanded an explanation from the Lin family, and would certainly take me back to her residence for punishment. Elder sister, I said calmly, I cannot be in two places at once. Could I have fought Princess Rong'an, while also climbing the mountain for a secret meeting with Prince Ding? My elder sister's face flushed, and sweat dotted her forehead. She had never imagined that someone as cautious and restrained as I was would create such a serious incident today. There was no longer any way to force me to bear her blame. Her hands twisted the handkerchief so tightly that she seemed ready to tear it apart. She glanced timidly at Eunuch Liu, then cautiously at Nanny Zheng. Princess Consort and came from an eminent aristocratic family. Pampered since childhood and strong-tempered, she would tolerate no rival. If my elder sister followed Eunuch Liu to Prince Ing's residence, she would certainly meet no pleasant end, but if she refused, she would have to admit that she had fought Princess Rong'an. Neither Princess Rong'an nor the Grand Princess was easy to deceive. After hesitating for a long time, she could only watch as Nanny Zheng ordered the powerful matrons to seize me. Since the second young lady admits the offense, please accompany this old servant to the Grand Princess's residence. Eunuch Liu immediately understood the situation. With a wave of his hand, he ordered his people to seize my elder sister as well. Eldest young lady Lin, please come with this servant to meet Her Highness the Princess Consort. Both daughters of one family had caused grave trouble. From that day onward, no one in the capital would continue praising mother as virtuous and worthy. The Grand Princess had been married for many years before giving birth to her only child, Princess Rong'an. Naturally, she treasured the girl beyond measure. I had now scratched Rong'an's face. The Grand Princess ground her teeth in fury. The moment she saw me, she ordered instruments of punishment brought forward terrified. I dropped to my knees and begged for mercy. Your Highness, please calm your anger. I did not scratch the princess by accident. I did it deliberately. I did so because I learned a secret and needed to meet Your Highness. With no other method available, I was forced to use this desperate measure. A secret? The Grand Princess's half-raised arm froze in midair. Her phoenix eyes narrowed as a cold light moved through them, and she examined me from head to toe. She was over 40 but had aged remarkably well. The unrivaled beauty of her youth still lingered around her eyes and brows. At that moment, however, her expression was menacing, and the force of her presence was so oppressive that even the palace maids in the hall dared not breathe too loudly. Do you know what kind of person I despise most? She slowly lowered her hand, smoothed her sleeve, and walked toward me one step at a time. Those who imagine themselves clever enough to manipulate me with a few sentences. I would not dare. I prostrated myself, pressing my forehead against the cold, golden floor tiles. Since I dared to come, I prepared everything carefully. If Your Highness grants me the time needed to drink 1 cup of tea, and even one word I say proves false, I will willingly accept death by 1,000 cuts. The Grand Princess remained silent. I felt her gaze piercing the back of my neck like needles. After a long while, she suddenly gave a soft laugh. Stand and speak, I obeyed, keeping my head lowered and my gaze fixed on the hem of her skirt, embroidered with gold thread peonies. Speak! She returned to the seat of honor, lifted her teacup, and took an unhurried sip. If your secret is not worth hearing, you will still receive every one of those 20 strokes. I drew a deep breath and looked directly at her. Does Your Highness know that although Prince Ning and my elder sister appeared to be meeting privately on Mount Dong today, their true purpose was to enter a secret chamber in Guanyin Temple and meet someone else? Who? Song Huayuan, the Minister of War. The Grand Princess set her teacup down heavily. Song Huayuan was the Minister of War and the future father-in-law of Princess Rong'an. The man betrothed to Rong'an was his eldest son, Song Licheng. How do you know this? My elder sister has secretly met Prince Ning many times. On one occasion, she happened to mention meeting the Minister of War. She spoke carelessly, but I remembered it and quietly made inquiries. Your Highness also knows that Prince Ning is notorious for his romantic affairs. If he is now dealing privately with the Minister of War, it cannot be for anything good. I wish to warn Your Highness, but my status is low. Meeting you was more difficult than ascending to heaven. In desperation, I had no choice but to offend the princess in order to gain an audience. I beg Your Highness to forgive me. I knelt again and struck my forehead against the golden floor tiles. The hall became so silent that a falling needle could have been heard. The Grand Princess slowly rose and came to stand before me. Suddenly she lifted my chin and forced me to meet her eyes. The coldness in her phoenix eyes had faded. In its place was a sharp gaze, as though she were assessing prey. "Little girl, do you understand that if even half a word of what you just said spreads outside, everyone in the Line household could be beheaded?" I looked directly at her and answered each word clearly. "I understand. That is why I told only your highness." The Grand Princess studied me for a long time. Then she released me, stepped back twice and laughed. Her smile held a trace of interest, surprise, and even approval. "What a daring girl," she returned to the seat of honor. Her tone had softened considerably. "The marriage between Rong'an and Song Licheng was personally arranged by my imperial brother. His greatest concern has always been that the Minister of War might secretly associate with one of the imperial princes. I never expected that old fox Song Huayuan to be bold enough to collude with Prince Ning behind our backs. Does he intend to rebel? Perhaps not open rebellion, but he truly intends to replace the Crown Prince." The Crown Prince's maternal family was not powerful. His only firm support was a maternal uncle who commanded troops on the frontier. By contrast, both Prince Ning's maternal clan and his wife's family were great aristocratic houses. The only thing he lacked was military authority. In my previous life, after stabbing someone, my elder sister had also begged Prince Ling to take her into his residence as a secondary consort, so that she would have protection. But Prince Ling desperately needed the support of Princess Consort Ning's maiden family. How could he agree to my elder sister's demand? That was why she retreated and hastily married the heir of Yongning Manor. Unfortunately for Prince Ling, human calculation could not overcome fate. He never imagined that after secretly meeting him, my elder sister would stab the Crown Prince on her way home. The Crown Prince searched everywhere for his attacker. In the end, the investigation uncovered Prince Ning's traces and brought him down. The entire Song household was implicated. Even Princess Rong'an, who had already married into that family, suffered unjustly. The Grand Princess never even had the chance to plead for her. Now I had moved first and revealed Prince Ning and Minister Song's scheme to the Grand Princess. She would have enough time to make proper arrangements for Rong'an in the end. I had saved Princess Rong'an's life. The Grand Princess had never dealt with me before. At that moment, she believed only half of what I said and doubted the rest. To prevent me from fabricating the story merely to escape punishment, she ordered people to guard me until the truth could be investigated. That suited me perfectly. The Crown Prince of the Eastern Palace was the heir to the empire. Someone had gravely wounded him. Whether he survived or died, every clue would eventually lead to my elder sister and Prince Ning. My elder sister was exceptionally skilled at denying blame. With the Grand Princess as my witness, she could no longer place everything on my head. The Grand Princess acted decisively. The very night she received my information, she ordered soldiers from her residence to disguise themselves as secret agents and watch Prince Ning and Song Huayuan in silence. One night passed. No news came from Prince Ning, but turmoil erupted first in the Eastern Palace. Crown Prince Li Xuan had left the palace in disguise, and still had not returned when the palace gates closed. The Eastern Palace guards were terrified. They searched every place the Crown Prince usually visited and finally found him on the slope of Mount Dong. He was only a breath away from death. The imperial physicians worked through the night before preserving the faintest thread of life, but he had lost too much blood, and his constitution was badly damaged. At best, he might remain unconscious for many days. At worst, his internal organs might have suffered lasting damage. Even if he lived, he might never again be able to command troops or manage affairs of state. The emperor flew into a rage. He severely punished every palace servant and guard responsible for attending the Crown Prince, then ordered a full investigation. The Ministry of Justice handled the case. The censorate conducted the preliminary inquiry within the imperial city. The Eastern Palace's left guard commander and the entire Imperial Forest Guard were mobilized to search for clues. After hearing the news, the Grand Princess entered the palace. The moment she returned, she summoned me. "Tell me. How much do you know about the attack on the Crown Prince? Was Prince Ning behind it?" I pretended to be confused and shook my head. I discovered only that Prince Ning was colluding with Minister Song. I knew nothing of a plan to assassinate His Highness the Crown Prince. Having lived once before, I was no longer a fool. If I admitted knowing and failing to report it, and the Crown Prince was gravely injured or died, would I not share the blame? After all, I was only a sheltered young lady learning. That Prince Ning dealt privately with Minister Song was already difficult. It was perfectly reasonable that I knew nothing of their deeper plot. Sure enough, the Grand Princess asked no further questions. She ordered my bonds removed and said, "As for yesterday, I will treat it as the princess being mischievous and quarreling with you." She carefully placed the paper containing the information her agents had gathered into her sleeve and lightly patted my shoulder. "For now I will not pursue your offense." The Grand Princess rose. The hem of her gold-thread peony skirt brushed over the golden floor tiles with a soft rustle. "But do you know why Song Huayuan's eldest son, Song Licheng, has still not married Rong'an? I heard that Song Licheng fell from a horse during last year's autumn hunt and broke his leg. He has remained bedridden, so the wedding has repeatedly been postponed." The Grand Princess turned around. Sunlight shone from behind her, surrounding her with a pale golden glow and obscuring her expression. "What if I told you Song Licheng never fell from a horse? What if his own father personally broke that leg?" I abruptly raised my head and met the cold smile in her phoenix eyes. "That old fox Song Huayuan never intended to let his son marry Rong'an." The Grand Princess slowly picked up a candied fruit from the table. She did not eat it, merely rotated it between her fingertips. On one hand, he accepted the marriage edict from my imperial brother. On the other, he secretly associated with Prince Ning. I understand perfectly what he is planning. Rong'an is only a chess piece. The day Prince Ning succeeds in seizing power will also be the day Rong'an suddenly falls ill and dies. Song Licheng will then marry another noble daughter, while Prince gains the support of the Ministry of War. It would achieve two goals at once. She suddenly threw the candied fruit onto the table. The amber sweet bounced twice and rolled to my feet. They calculated every possibility, yet never imagined I would learn of their scheme from the mouth of a girl like you. I bent down, picked up the candied fruit, and offered it back with both hands. "Your Highness is wise." The Grand Princess did not take it. She merely looked at me with an unreadable smile. "You went to great effort to bring me this information. You must want something, speak. What do you desire?" What did I desire? I knelt with my back straight, looked directly at her, and spoke each word clearly. "I do not ask for glory or wealth. I ask only to preserve my innocence and live freely. If one day I fall into prison, I beg your Highness to show mercy and save my life." The Grand Princess listened in silence, then gave a soft laugh. "You are indeed clever. Tonight I will enter the palace and ask His Majesty to cancel Rong's engagement." She removed a white jade hairpin from her hair and placed it in my palm. "In recognition of your service, I will grant you one promise. If you ever encounter disaster, come to me. I will save your life." The white jade hairpin felt cool in my hand. A magnolia bud was carved along its shaft. Its surface was smooth and delicate. One touch revealed it to be the finest Hessian jade. I closed my fingers around the hairpin, my throat tightening. "Thank you, Your Highness." Night had fallen by the time I left the Grand Princess's residence. The carriage wheels rattled across the bluestone street, mingling with the distant beat of the night watch drum. Leaning against the carriage wall, I finally realized that my back was soaked in cold sweat. I had rehearsed every sentence I spoke before the Grand Princess countless times, ensuring that not the smallest flaw would appear. At last I had emerged unharmed. The carriage turned a corner, and the wind lifted one edge of the curtain. I suddenly saw a familiar figure standing by the roadside. My elder sister wore a dusty pink skirt and clutched a handkerchief tightly. She stood on tiptoe, staring anxiously toward the Grand Princess's residence. Eunuch Liu had taken her to Prince Ning's residence. I did not know how she had managed to escape. Now, standing in the dusk, she could not hide the urgency and panic on her face. I told the driver to stop, lifted the curtain, and called to her. She whirled around in alarm. When she saw me, she froze briefly, and then hurried toward the carriage. "Younger sister, are you all right? The Grand Princess did not make things difficult for you, did she?" "She did, but I managed to deal with it." I looked up at her. "What about you? Why are you standing here? What happened at Prince Ning's residence?" My elder sister bit her lip, her eyes red with grievance and resentment. "Her Highness the Princess Consort scolded me, but she had no firm evidence. I insisted that I was already engaged to the heir of Yongning Manor, and that the matter between Prince and me was merely a misunderstanding. She had her own concerns, so she released me. I had learned in my previous life that my elder sister secretly met Prince Ning. I discovered it by accident while investigating why she later fell out with the heir of Yongning Manor. I had used that knowledge at precisely the right moment, though I did not know every detail. I knew only that she had once dreamed of entering Prince Ning's residence as a secondary consort. Unfortunately for her, she never understood that a man as promiscuous as Princeton had never treated women. Sincerely, he amused himself with them a few times, and then casually discarded them. After this incident, my elder sister finally saw Princeton's true nature. Just as in my previous life, she still chose to marry the heir of Yangning Manor. Unfortunately, in this life, no one would allow her to use them as a stepping stone into the palace and rise above everyone else. After a peaceful night, I woke the next morning to hear that my elder sister had invited the heir of Yangning Manor to accompany her to Guanyin Temple on Mount Dong to pray for blessings. She called it a prayer journey, but in truth, she wanted to see whether the man she had stabbed was alive or dead. I had already calculated the timing for her. It had been 3 days since she wounded Li Xuan. Li Xuan was the crown prince and had been attacked nearly to death. The imperial guards had searched the entire capital for a day and a night. It would not be long before they traced the clues to my elder sister. The letter mother sent to Yang Zhou had not yet received a reply. Afraid that an unexpected change might occur, I stayed inside for the next 2 days. In my room, I added the character he to every handkerchief I had embroidered before and stitched a second hidden pattern in an inconspicuous place. Before long, news of my impending engagement reached my elder sister. After returning from Mount Dong, she came to see me of her own accord, a rare occurrence. She stood beneath the crabapple tree in my courtyard and looked at me with a half-smile. I hear you are about to become engaged to young Master Zhou, the son of the assistant prefect of Yangzhou. I did not raise my head. Elder sister is remarkably well informed. Yangzhou is so far away. Once you marry there, you will not even have anyone familiar to speak with. She gave a small snort. Her voice carried the pity of someone bestowing a favor. Why not ask mother to consider other young gentlemen in the capital? I know several whose appearance and character are both acceptable. I could introduce them to you. Only then did I look up. Sunlight filtered through the crabapple branches and fell across her face, revealing the fine down on her skin. She looked better than she had in the previous few days. Perhaps she had finally persuaded herself that if the injured man did not come to her door, he could not implicate her. She had even applied rouge. The faint red color made her lips appear brighter. Thank you for your concern, elder sister. I put away the embroidered handkerchief. But I hear that Yangzhou is a fine place. Young Master Zhou is upright and handsome. It seems an excellent match. My elder sister was left speechless. Her expression immediately darkened. After a long pause, she said, Qinglan, I advise you not to marry so far away. You are still young and have a long life ahead of you. If anything happens later, your maiden family will be too distant to support you. Having spoken, she seemed to feel she had gained the upper hand. She raised her chin and walked away. I remained where I was and watched the hem of her skirt sweep across the bluestone path. I found it laughable. Support me? I would already be fortunate if she and my own parents stopped plotting against and suppressing me. How could I dare hope that my maiden family would protect me? Fortunately, I had now learned to support myself. At first light the next morning, urgent pounding sounded at the front gate. I woke, put on an outer robe and opened the window. Several household servants were rushing toward the gate. Soon afterward, a maid from mother's rooms lifted her skirt and ran down the corridor, her face deathly pale, as though she had just encountered someone formidable. I washed and dressed slowly. I stood before the mirror and carefully arranged the hair at my temples. Only then did I leave my courtyard. The main hall was already full of people. As expected, the imperial guards had finally traced the case to my elder sister. Mother sat in the seat of honor. Her face was white, but she still struggled to maintain the dignity of an official's wife. May I ask why the honored officers have come to our residence so early? The commander clasped his hands. His tone remained fairly courteous. Please forgive the disturbance, madam. This officer acts under His Majesty's order to investigate the attack on His Highness the Crown Prince 3 days ago. Our inquiry shows that the eldest daughter of your household visited Guanyin Temple on Mount Dong shortly before noon that day. Her movements coincide with the attacker's trail, so we have come to ask several questions. My elder sister stood beside mother. She had entered with her head held high. The instant she heard the words, His Highness the Crown Prince, her body seemed to lose all strength. She had to grip the back of a chair to remain standing. Mother was plainly frightened as well, but she stubbornly replied, My daughter is merely a sheltered young lady. How could she be connected to an assassination? Your Excellency must be mistaken. We will know after questioning her. The commander turned slightly toward my elder sister. Eldest young lady Lin, at what hour did you arrive at Guanyin Temple that day? How long did you remain there? Did you see anyone suspicious? The hall fell silent. My elder sister opened her mouth. After a long time, she answered in a trembling voice. I arrived at around 7:45 that morning. After worshipping the Buddha, I went down the mountain. I saw nothing. Do you have a witness? Of course she did not. She was already engaged, yet had secretly arranged to meet Prince Ning. It was shameful enough that she dared not reveal it. Every time she climbed the mountain, she disguised herself as a man. Only she and Prince Ning had been present. Where could she find a witness? Her face turned white. Instinctively, she looked toward me and almost asked me to testify. Then, as if remembering something, she swallowed the words. After a long pause, she merely shook her head. Few people climbed the mountain at that hour. I do not know whether anyone saw me. So you have no witness? The commander's voice turned cold. In that case, eldest young Lady Lin, please come with us and give a full statement before the Minister of Justice and the investigating censor. No. I will not go, mother. Speak for me! My helpless elder sister looked at mother. Only now did she remember to call her mother. But mother did not rejoice as she expected. Instead, that form of address made her tremble in alarm. Mother stepped forward instinctively to plead. Your Excellency, I can testify. Between 9 and 11 that morning, my eldest daughter Lin Qingfu returned from praying at Mount Dong. She even brought me a protective talisman from there. Yes, the protective talisman. I have always carried it with me. Mother hurriedly drew the talisman from inside her robe. I looked at it. It was the very talisman I had once obtained. When mother had been unable to conceive, I had climbed Mount Dong and repeatedly bowed to pray for her. Now, to protect my elder sister, she transferred that deed to her as well. My elder sister nodded repeatedly. Yes, I went to Mount Dong to pray for mother. Everyone in the household can testify. Members of one family naturally protect one another. Your mother's words cannot be treated as evidence. The Imperial Guard commander was unmoved. He waved his hand and again ordered his men to seize my elder sister. Mother and my elder sister both changed color in fright. Mother turned and shouted at me. Have you gone mute? Why are you just standing there without saying a word? Think of a way to save your elder sister. She is a young woman. If she is taken to the Imperial prison, how can she survive? What method could I have? Does mother expect me to take elder sister's place? Are you truly innocent? Before I finished speaking, a voice came from beyond the courtyard. I looked up and unexpectedly saw Li Xuan. Though his body had not recovered, he had forced himself to come. His face was deathly pale. Supporting himself on a eunuch's arm, he entered, covered his mouth, coughed twice, and spoke hoarsely. Lin Qinglan, you stabbed me with a bamboo joint hairpin and fled. Did you imagine no one would discover the truth? Now you even seek to frame your own elder sister. Your heart is vicious. This is a crime worthy of clan extermination. In my previous life, Li Xuan had never appeared when the Imperial Guards searched the Lin residence, yet in this life he had suddenly come. Could he also have been reborn? If so, that was even better. Had he not always refused to believe that my elder sister stabbed him while I was the one who saved him? In this life, I would make him open his damned eyes and see the truth clearly. May I ask why your highness insists that I stabbed you? I stepped forward, curtsied, and asked slowly, what evidence does your highness possess? I am the evidence. Li Xuan took the central seat in the hall and pointed toward the front of his robe. The person who stabbed me used a bamboo joint hairpin. I hear that when the second young lady came of age, her mother had a bamboo joint hairpin made especially for her. If you claim innocence, bring that hairpin here and let me examine it carefully. A bamboo joint hairpin. My elder sister froze. She had not expected Li Xuan to remember the weapon so clearly. Yes, a bamboo joint hairpin. Regaining her senses, she thought she had found a way to reverse the situation and hurriedly pointed at me. When my younger sister Lin Qinglan came of age, mother had a bamboo joint hairpin made for her mother. Say it quickly. Is that not true? Pressed by her, mother became flustered. She saw the calculation in my elder sister's eyes, shrank slightly, and glanced at me. In the end, she gritted her teeth. Yes, when Qinglan came of age, I had a bamboo joint hairpin made for her. Lin Qinglan, both witness and physical evidence point to you. What else can you say? Li Xuan stared at me fiercely, as though I had committed an unforgivable crime. I pursed my lips. On the day I came of age, mother did indeed have a bamboo joint hairpin made for me, but elder sister complained that mother favored me to soothe her. Mother gave the hairpin to her instead. In the end, elder sister became the true owner of that bamboo joint hairpin, not me. My elder sister hurriedly said, on the day your highness was attacked, I personally saw my younger sister throw the bamboo joint hairpin into the pond. If your highness does not believe me, send someone to retrieve it. Then she looked at me sorrowfully. Younger sister, I know you have always been competitive. You resented that I was engaged to the heir of Yangning Manor, so you tried to frame me. but I never imagined you would stab His Highness. Do you want to destroy our entire family? After speaking, she began sobbing as though truly heartbroken. The disgust in Li Xuan's gaze deepened. He waved to the Eastern Palace guards and ordered them to search the pond immediately for the bamboo joint hairpin. I remained in the front hall without the slightest fear on my face. May I ask your highness on which day the attack occurred? The 15th day of the month, Li Xuan answered instinctively. Then he frowned and glared at me. Why do you ask? I curtsied again. I beg your highness to investigate carefully. On the 15th day, mother had little appetite, so I went to the 5 Flavors Pavilion to buy 5 white pastries to aid her digestion. The shop makes only a limited quantity. Princess Rong also wished to buy the final portion and we fought over it. Afterward, a senior nanny from the Grand Princess's residence took me there to answer for the offense. Her Highness punished and confined me until the following evening before allowing me home. Princess Rong'an and the Grand Princess can both testify. I do not understand why elder sister claims she saw me throw away the bamboo joint hairpin. You were confined by my imperial aunt? Li Xuan's brow furrowed more deeply. On the 15th day I had complete witnesses and evidence proving that I never went to Mount Dong and could not have attempted to take his life. His doubtful gaze moved between my elder sister and me while he hesitated. The guards sent to search the pond returned. Your Highness, we found only 1 earring, a fishing rod, and a writing brush at the bottom of the pond. There was nothing else. How is that possible? Li Xuan's face turned livid. Did you search carefully? The pond was completely drained and the bottom is now dry. This subordinate examined every part. There truly was no bamboo joint hairpin. Impossible. I clearly saw her throw it into the pond that day. My elder sister's fingernails dug into her palms. Her face was white as paper, yet she forced herself to continue. She must have secretly retrieved it during the night. I lowered my eyes and did not argue with her. Instead, I bowed respectfully to Li Xuan. If your highness does not believe me, you may order every room in the residence searched. Then we will know who is lying, and to whom the bamboo joint hairpin truly belongs. Li Xuan stared at me for a long time. The chill in his eyes seemed ready to freeze into ice. He lifted his chin toward the guards beside him. Do as she says. The guards accepted the order and left. Footsteps echoed along the corridors, then scattered into the different courtyards. The main hall fell into suffocating silence. My elder sister knelt on the floor, her shoulders trembling. She bit her lip and stared at me as though her eyes were daggers carving into my body. Mother clenched both hands. Several times she tried to speak, but the cold-faced Imperial Guard commander beside Li Xuan frightened her into silence. About a quarter of an hour later, the search party returned. The leading guard carried a red sandalwood box. He bowed and presented it to Li Xuan. Your Highness, this object was found in a hidden compartment of the wardrobe in the eldest young lady's room. Li Xuan frowned and opened the lid himself. Inside lay a bamboo joint hairpin, thick at the head and slender along the shaft. Its head was carved like a bamboo node and decorated with raised bamboo leaves, symbolizing the blessing that bamboo brings peace. It was the same hairpin mother had commissioned from the finest artisan in Yangzhou for my coming-of-age ceremony. Dark brown stains remained along the carved branches and leaves. Although 3 days had passed, they were still glaringly visible. Li Xuan's expression changed at once. My elder sister jerked her head up. Her pupils contracted as though she had seen a ghost. Impossible. I clearly saw you throw it into the pond. Elder sister, the hairpin was found in your room. I spoke at precisely the right moment, wearing an aggrieved expression. Even now, do you still intend to frame me? Her words lodged in her throat. All blood drained from her face. Her lips trembled for a long time before she managed to speak. You set me up, you planned for this day. You retrieved the hairpin and secretly placed it in my room, didn't you? What do you mean, elder sister? I turned slowly and looked at her calmly. Since childhood, you have had one habit. Whenever I receive something good, you must take it. The bamboo joint hairpin was mother's coming-of-age gift to me. Compared with the ruby jewelry set you received at your own ceremony, it was not worth much, yet it still stayed a scene for an entire day, until mother had no choice but to give it to you. I did not know what you later used it for. Nor did I know when His Highness would visit Mount Dong. How could I have plotted against you? My elder sister's face changed from white to ashen. She opened her mouth to argue, but could not produce a word, but that was nowhere near enough. I also wanted Li Xuan to know exactly what she had done on Mount Dong that day. Now that I recall it, did elder sister Anton also go with Prince Nung on the 15th day to pray at Guanyin Temple? The commander asked when elder sister came down the mountain and whether anyone could testify, but she has still not answered clearly. You went with Prince Ning to Guanyin Temple on Mount Dong? Li Xuan's gaze fixed on my elder sister. Disbelief showed plainly on his pale face. You were also involved with Prince Thing? No, I did not! My elder sister finally panicked. She crawled 2 steps on her knees and clutched the hem of Li Xuan's robe with both hands. Lin Qinglan is framing me. Since childhood, she has hated that I outshone her. She hates that I was engaged to the heir of Yongning Manor, so she designed this trap to harm me. That hairpin, she must have secretly placed it in my room while I was not paying attention. Elder sister, please be careful with your words, I said coldly. Your Highness need only ask Princess Consort Ning to learn whether you went to Mount Dong with Prince Ning. As for the matter between Princess Rong'an and me, one inquiry at the Grand Princess's residence will establish right and wrong. This time, my elder sister had nothing left to say. Li Xuan kicked her hands away. His body was already weak, and the movement used too much force. He staggered and had to brace himself against the table. A thin sheen of sweat appeared on his forehead, while 2 dark flames burned in his eyes. You went with Prince Ning to pray at Guanyin Temple on Mount Dong. Since when did you become so close to him without my knowledge? My elder sister fell back onto the floor. Her hair had come loose, and hairpins lay scattered around her. She struggled backward 2 steps on her hands. Your Highness, please calm your anger. Prince Ning invited me. I did not dare refuse, but I truly did not stab your Highness. You did not dare refuse? Li Xuan gave a cold laugh. His hoarse voice sounded like sandpaper scraping over stone. Did you not once say that you went to Mount Dong to pray for your mother, and therefore happened to save me? Why has it now become Prince Ning inviting you there? My elder sister's lips trembled. Not only could she not explain why she had visited Mount Dong, she had no idea what Li Xuan was talking about. She had not been reborn, naturally. She did not remember the lies she had told in the previous life. Faced with Li Xuan's accusations, all she could do was weep and beg. Mother stood beside her, stamping her feet in anxiety. Finally, she abandoned all concern for the dignity of an official's wife and threw herself down at Li Xuan's feet. Your Highness, please calm your anger. My daughter is still young and ignorant. There is absolutely no improper relationship between her and Prince Ning. They merely happened to travel together to Guanyin Temple to offer incense. But as for assassinating the Crown Prince King Fu, could never do such a thing. She would never dare. Xishan looked down at mother kneeling at his feet, then at my elder sister trembling on the floor. Finally his eyes settled on me. I met that gloomy gaze and stood in the flower hall neither arrogant nor submissive. After a long time he slowly spoke. The second young lady Lin is remarkably calm. Your Highness, I believe that the innocent remain innocent and the guilty cannot hide their guilt. If your Highness intends to investigate, please uncover the entire truth today and restore my good name. Your good name? Li Xuan seemed to hear something amusing. One corner of his mouth lifted, but the movement tugged at the wound in his chest. He covered his mouth and coughed twice. Today I will see how innocent you truly are. He pointed at the bamboo joint hairpin and ordered the Imperial Guard commander. Take this hairpin to the Ministry of Justice and determine whether it matches the marks on my chest wound. Also send people to the Grand Princess's residence and Prince Ning's residence. Obtain testimony from Princess Rong'an and Princess Consort Ning. The commander accepted the order and withdrew. The atmosphere in the hall became even more oppressive. My elder sister remained collapsed on the floor. Tears covered her face and her makeup had smeared into 2 messy streaks. None of her usual radiant beauty remained. At last she seemed to understand that she had fallen into a trap. Her venomous gaze bored into me. Her lips trembled as she whispered, Lin Qinglan, you are truly vicious. Vicious? Compared with how she had taken my credit, stolen the crown prince and the imperial physicians from me with a few false accusations, and ultimately caused my miserable death, I had merely returned everything she did to me. Before long, the guard sent to the Grand Princess's residence returned. When Li Xuan asked about the 15th day, the guard bowed and reported, Your Highness, the Grand Princess personally confirmed that Princess Rongsen and the second young lady Lin did indeed quarrel at the 5 Flavors Pavilion that day. Only one portion of 5 white pastries remained, and both wished to buy it, so they struggled over it. Princess Rong fell, then ran home crying. After learning what happened, the Grand Princess sent people to bring the second young lady Lin to her residence for questioning. She was not permitted to return home until the following evening. Li Xuan's expression darkened slightly. My imperial aunt said this herself? Yes. The Grand Princess also said that after the second young lady Lin was confined in a rear room of the residence, she did not leave it for an entire day and night. Only after she completed her punishment did Her Highness release her. At that moment, the guards sent to Prince Ning's residence also returned. Princess Consort Ning refused to appear in person. She sent the chief administrator of the princely household, who had been present that day, to answer. He confirmed that witnesses had indeed seen Prince Ning and my elder sister climbing Mount Dong together on the 15th day. After hearing the rumors, Princess Consort Ning came to the Lin residence to demand an explanation, but later determined that it had merely been a misunderstanding. My elder sister was already engaged. She claimed that she had gone to Mount Dong only to pray for her fiancé, and had happened to share the road with Prince Ning. Before the crown prince, my elder sister claimed she had gone up the mountain to pray for mother. Before Princess Consort Ning, she said she had prayed for her fiancé. Her statements contradicted one another. It was impossible not to wonder how much truth and how much falsehood existed in everything she had said. Both then and now silence once again filled the hall. Li Xuan looked down at my elder sister. The pity he had once shown her was gone, replaced by a thin layer of suspicion and disgust. No matter how foolish he was, he now understood who had truly stabbed him in the previous life. He also understood that after injuring him, my elder sister had never returned to the mountain. Therefore, she could not have been the one who saved him. Someone else had done so. Take Lin Qingfu away. Question her thoroughly and determine whether she attacked me alone or acted under another person's orders. Clearly, Li Xuan had begun to suspect that my elder sister had colluded with Prince Ning to assassinate him. Had his investigation not ultimately led to Prince Ning's in the previous life as well? How pitiful! In my previous life my elder sister falsely accused me and made me suffer every torment. Now she could finally taste what it meant to be falsely suspected herself. No matter how many years of affection she and Li Xuan had shared in the previous life, she could not escape imprisonment now. Mother and father, who had hurried home after hearing the news, both changed color. They knelt together and begged for my elder sister. They feared only one thing: if her crime of attacking the crown prince was formally established, the entire Lin family might be buried with her. Fortunately, the law of our dynasty did not implicate daughters who had married out of their birth families. My engagement to young Master Zhou had already been settled. Yangzhou lay a great distance from the capital, and even delivering the formal betrothal letter required several days. Even if news of the Lin family's disaster reached Yangzhou, by the time the Zhou family reacted and attempted to cancel the marriage, I should already have escaped the filthy mire of the Lin household. Moreover, I had preserved a path of retreat with the Grand Princess. As for the engagement between my elder sister and the heir of Yangning Manor, it would most likely be cancelled. While I was thinking, Li Xuan suddenly asked, "Do you have nothing to say to me?" What could I say? He had been reborn. I could never reveal that I had also been reborn. I could only lower my head respectfully and shake it. I ask only that my innocence be recognized. Beyond that, I have nothing to say. Li Xuan's gaze darkened. He gave a slight nod to the eunuch beside him. The eunuch immediately understood and ordered men to escort my elder sister away, before turning to leave the hall. Father ran after them, continuing to plead for mercy. At last, mother could no longer restrain herself. Her voice trembled. "Qinglan, how could you? She is your elder sister." I turned to mother and gave a cold laugh. "When I was falsely accused in my previous life, did you ever remember that I was also Lin Qingfu's younger sister? Yet now that elder sister is the one in trouble, you turn around and question me." "Mother," I curved my lips, leaned close to her ear and whispered, "Do you remember concubine Zhou? 7 years ago, when she was nearing the end of her pregnancy, the child grew too large, and the labor became obstructed. In the end, neither mother nor child survived. Every bowl of nourishing, medicinal soup she drank was delivered by a maid on your orders. Isn't that right? You hated her for being beautiful, for winning father's favor, and for conceiving a son before you did. You also looked down on her for being poorly educated and greedy for food. So you deliberately spread the claim that the more nourishment a pregnant woman consumed, the better it would be for the child." Kunkyujo believed those words and ate without restraint. In the end, the baby grew too large for her to deliver safely. 7 years ago I was only 9, while elder sister was already 12. She was older and understood far more. That is why she has used the deaths of concubine Zhou and her unborn child to threaten you all these years and force you to favor her again and again. Am I right? You both— Mother's mouth opened and closed for a long time, but she could not form a complete sentence. I smiled again. "Mother, think carefully. Elder sister has committed the grave crime of attacking the crown prince. If His Majesty pursues the matter, Even if she claims it was unintentional, you and father will not escape responsibility. At best you may be flogged, at worst you may be exiled nearly 1,000 miles away. You want me to bear the crime for her. Do you still imagine she will show you greater mercy after she is released? Should your own daughter not love you more than your stepdaughter? Mother collapsed into a chair as though all strength had left her body. Her face was gray as she looked at me. Qinglan, when did you become so ruthless? I turned toward her, my voice calm. Mother, I have merely learned half of elder sister's ability. Mother's face turned deathly pale. Seeing her like that brought me no satisfaction. In the end, she had been controlled by my elder sister for 7 years, only because of her own wrongdoing. She was pitiable, perhaps, but she did not deserve sympathy. Outside, father's broken pleas continued. His voice mingled with the rapid beat of boots against the blue stone ground. The crown prince's men worked efficiently. Within moments, my elder sister had been placed in a prison cart outside the residence. Her piercing cries carried over the courtyard wall. She screamed that she had been wronged. She screamed that her stepmother had no maternal kindness and had colluded with her biological daughter to destroy her. Mother bit her lip. Tears streamed down her face and soaked a large patch of the dark blue pattern on the front of her robe. Virtuous, gentle, righteous. Every word of praise once bestowed on Mother now seemed like a slap across her face, leaving her too ashamed to show herself. The Zhou family's betrothal letter finally arrived before Lin Qingfu was convicted. Lin Qingfu had been pampered since childhood. How could she endure the harsh punishments of prison? After only 20 strokes, she confessed everything. She admitted her secret affair with Prince Ning. She also confessed that after descending the mountain alone that day, she had developed stomach pain and entered the woods halfway down the slope to relieve herself. There she happened to encounter Li Xuan, who had also stepped into the woods for privacy. She mistook him for a lecher's, stabbed him with the hairpin, and fled. Unfortunately, she had never known that the man she stabbed was the current crown prince. Yan Manor eventually learned of the disgraceful matter between my elder sister and Prince Ning. The household erupted in fury and immediately cancelled her engagement. Before father and mother could finish grieving or complaining, an imperial edict arrived. Mother had failed to discipline her daughter and was sentenced to 30 strokes. Father had failed to govern his household, so he was stripped of office, reduced to commoner status, and sent into exile in the south with the rest of the Lin family. Without an imperial decree, none of them could return to the capital. Because I already had a formal engagement, I narrowly escaped their fate, but I never expected Li Xuan to appear in my courtyard in the middle of the night. Seeing my guarded expression, he sighed softly. Do not be afraid. I did not come tonight because of Lin Qingfu. I came because of you, Qinglan. I looked up and met those deep eyes. Candlelight flickered within them, reflecting an unreadable gleam. I do not understand, Your Highness. Li Xuan did not answer at once. With both hands behind his back, he lightly tapped his knuckles together. Under the moonlight, his pale face looked frighteningly cold. Qinglan, you were also reborn, were you not? He spoke abruptly and stared at me with burning intensity. From the first moment we met again, you showed no fear of me. Your elder sister knelt on the ground, trembling. Your mother knelt and pleaded. Your father struck his forehead against the floor until it bruised. Only you kept your back straight from beginning to end, speaking neither arrogantly nor humbly. How could a sheltered young lady who had barely left her home remain so calm before the crown prince? Unless you are like me, someone who has already lived through one lifetime. You hated me for being blind in the previous life and causing your miserable death. That is why, when Lin Qingfu told you she had stabbed someone, you did not rush up the mountain to save me as you once did. Is that not so? His guess was remarkably accurate. But who said I had to admit it merely because he guessed correctly? I do not understand what Your Highness is saying. I did not know that the person elder sister injured on Mount Dong was Your Highness. Furthermore, even had I wished to save you, I could not have been in 2 places at once. At the time, the Grand Princess's people had already taken me away. If I had known the injured person was Your Highness, I would certainly have gone up the mountain to save you, even at the cost of offending the Grand Princess. I spoke with convincing alarm. As expected, Li Xuan's expression changed several times. After a long while, he reached out and grasped my wrist. It is better if you remember nothing of the previous life. I have seen everything clearly now. This time I will marry you as crown princess and later make you empress. Our son will also be raised at your side. No one will ever separate us again. Had he not mentioned my son, I might have remained calmer the instant he did. Hatred surged through me. I hated him for stripping away my right to be a mother. I hated him even more for forcing my own son to acknowledge my enemy as his mother. No matter how fiercely I hated him inside, my face remained perfectly still. I only pulled my hand back in confusion, stepped away, and bowed. Your Highness, I am already engaged to young Master Zhou, the son of the assistant prefect of Yangzhou. Li Xuan's fingers froze in midair as though my words had burned him. Zhou Heng, the legitimate son of Zhou Pingyi, assistant prefect of Yangzhou? How did you become engaged to him? In the previous life? I never heard you mention. He stopped abruptly. Of course I had never mentioned it in the previous life, because that engagement had never been completed. Now that the formal betrothal letter had arrived, I was not deceiving him. Several dogs barked beyond the courtyard wall. Li Xuan tilted his head and listened before saying, "It is late rest. There is no urgency concerning the engagement in any case." He did not finish, but his meaning was clear. He intended to wait until he became emperor before giving me an answer. I said nothing. The dogs barked again. Li Xuan turned and left, leaving only a cold patch of moonlight across the ground. I remained where I was until his figure vanished into the night. Only then did I slowly release a long breath. My palms were already slick with sweat inside my sleeves. I had guessed correctly. A few days later, urgent news arrived from Yangzhou. Zhou Heng had fallen from a horse while traveling to a poetry gathering and broken his right leg. That very night, the Zhou family returned the betrothal letter, along with an exceptionally sincere apology, saying they did not dare delay the second young lady Lin's happiness for the rest of her life. When the Grand Princess heard, she gave a single laugh. Is that not an extraordinary coincidence? A coincidence? I folded the letter, placed it in a box and answered calmly, perhaps it was heaven's will, but that heaven was Li Xuan. By then, father and mother were already on the road to exile. My elder sister, unable to endure imprisonment, had made an attempt on her own life. She was rescued in time and survived with only a wound to her neck. Afterward, she was taken from the prison to join our parents in exile. Before leaving, she tried every possible method to see me, even using her body to seduce a jailer and force him to arrange the meeting. Younger sister, I nearly died once, and afterward I remembered many things. You remember them too, don't you? Days of imprisonment had left her thin and exhausted. Her former brilliance was long gone. The moment she saw me, however, her dull eyes lit with fierce intensity. She glared at me with hatred. That is why you deliberately threw away the bamboo joint hairpin and refused to go to Mount Dong to save the crown prince. Why would I? Having been given another life, did she truly expect me to continue clearing a path for her, so she could rise to power overnight? I do not understand what you mean about remembering anything, I said, refusing to admit the truth in a place where walls might have ears. You were the one who stabbed that man. If anyone should have saved him, it should have been you. Had you saved His Highness the Crown Prince, you might now have risen to the highest rank. How did you instead reach this ending? No, that is not how it was supposed to happen. She shook her head wildly. You were supposed to go to Mount Dong and save the Crown Prince. You were supposed to become Crown Princess, give birth to a son, and later become Empress. All of that should have belonged to me. You hate me. You hate Li Xuan. That is why you were so cruel. Do you even hate your own son by refusing to save Li Xuan? Have you abandoned your son as well? If I want a son, I can give birth to another. Why must he be Li Xuan's child? I pretended to cover my mouth in astonishment. Has elder sister lost her mind? I am not even married. Where would I have a son? My elder sister repeatedly shook her head and shouted that I too had been reborn. She claimed that because I hated her and Li Xuan for the previous life, I had deliberately refused to save him and intentionally allowed her to fall into prison. I sighed softly and said nothing more. I left her to shout and curse in resentment. She departed, but Li Xuan remained. Every day he sent one gift after another. One day it was a large box of East Sea pearls, the next an entire bolt of cloud brocade. Sometimes it was a love letter telling me to wait calmly for good news. Li Xuan was still Li Xuan. He had been the same in my previous life. Whenever he wanted something, he simply seized it. He believed there was nothing in the world he could not obtain. In this life, I would make him learn what it felt like to desire something and never possess it. I stored the East Sea pearls in the treasury. I ordered the cloud brocade cut into clothes. I threw the letter directly into the brazier. After news spread that the Zhou family had cancelled the engagement, no other family in the capital came to propose marriage. Lin Qingfu had committed a grave crime, and the Lin family had collapsed. I no longer possessed the standing to become crown princess, openly and honorably. Li Xuan was always meticulous and left nothing to chance. He was pressuring me, forcing me to accept my fate, forcing me to beg him first. Then he would bestow some insignificant status upon me as though granting charity. As for his promise that I would later become empress, had I not already been deceived by him once? How much could empty words without proof be trusted? Since he was forcing me, I could not sit still and await ruin. That afternoon, as dusk fell, I changed into simple clothing and hired a green felt sedan chair to take me to the Grand Princess's residence. Because of my warning, Princess Rong'an had cancelled her engagement to Song Licheng before Minister Song fell. She had therefore avoided being drawn into Prince's struggle for the position of Crown Prince. Perhaps remembering that debt, the Grand Princess treated me with warmth. "Last time you asked me to testify for you, and I helped once. Why have you come again?" I bowed. "For your highness." "For me?" the Grand Princess scoffed. "Prince Ting is dead and Rong'an has found another husband. What can you still do for me?" I pressed my lips together. After confirming that the attendant stood at a distance, I gathered my courage. Her Majesty the Empress Dowager is now over 70. His Majesty is also approaching 50. One day the Crown Prince will ascend the throne. At present, Your Highness is greatly honored both inside and outside the court, because you and His Majesty share the same mother and a close sibling bond. But after the Crown Prince becomes Emperor, will Your Highness still enjoy the same position? Why would I not? I am the Crown Prince's paternal aunt, but the current Empress is his birth mother. What are you implying? The Grand Princess raised an eyebrow. I lowered my head slightly. To preserve your affectionate relationship with His Majesty, Your Highness has spent years finding beautiful women and sending them into the harem to please him. But you have forgotten that the harem is the Empress's domain. Your actions offended her deepest taboo long ago. While His Majesty reigns, he will love and protect Your Highness. But after he dies, when Her Majesty the Empress remembers the past, will she truly refrain from settling those old accounts? At that time, the lives of your entire household will depend on a single thought from the Empress and the Crown Prince. Does Your Highness truly feel no fear? The Grand Princess tapped one slender fingertip twice against the red sandalwood armrest. Then, as though remembering something, she suddenly laughed. The fine lines at the corners of her eyes relaxed. What a daring girl! Since when does an unmarried young lady have the right to interfere in matters between me and the Empress? I did not raise my head. I merely bowed lower. Please allow me to finish. Although I am young, I have happened to witness certain things. I know how long a woman's resentment inside the harem can endure. Her Majesty the Empress is only 42 this year and is exceptionally well cared for. Living another 20 or 30 years would not be difficult. If His Majesty continues to reign for another 10 years, Your Highness will have 10 more peaceful years. But if the Crown Prince ascends tomorrow, the Empress will become Empress Dowager tomorrow. Would she have forgotten how much imperial favor those beauties you sent into the palace once took from her? The smile slowly vanished from the Grand Princess's lips. The water clock in the corner dripped steadily, making the silence seem endless. Are you trying to divide me from the Crown Prince and his mother? I would not dare. I am merely finding Your Highness a path of retreat. Most of the civil and military officials Your Highness knows at court respect you because of His Majesty. After the Crown Prince ascends, how many will remain loyal to you? If you do not prepare early, the new Empress Dowager could destroy years of your effort with a single decree. The Grand Princess's tapping fingers stopped. After a long silence, she slowly asked, "Then tell me, how should I prepare?" I drew a deep breath and spoke the plan I had considered for a long time. A marriage alliance. After being stabbed on Mount Dong, the Crown Prince's health was no longer what it had been. Rather than wait until after he ascended the throne to seek an escape, it would be better to prepare before he became emperor. Prince Ning was dead. Prince Yang and Prince Ping were both still young. Only Prince An was close to the Crown Prince in age, and his maternal relatives were weak. The Grand Princess could ally with Prince An and bring down the Crown Prince. If Prince An's consort belonged to the Grand Princess's side, she would naturally treat the Grand Princess with greater consideration after he took power. But I have only one daughter, Rong'an, and she is already promised to someone else. How could such a marriage be arranged? At that point, the Grand Princess suddenly laughed. This time, genuine amusement colored the sound. She rose, her long skirt gliding across the golden tiles, and walked toward me. She lifted my chin and looked directly into my eyes. You want to marry Prince An, you appear so young, yet I never expected you to plan so far ahead. I met her gaze without retreating. My abilities are limited, and I have little power. I came only because I have no path left and must beg Your Highness to show me a way to live. If Your Highness refuses, at worst I will marry a man of humble origins or remain unmarried and devote the rest of my life to the Buddha. But if Your Highness does not prepare early, What will become of you in the future? You understand that better than I do. The Grand Princess released me, stepped back half a pace and slowly walked around me. Your appearance is acceptable. Your figure is also good. Your mind is quick enough. Only your family background is somewhat troublesome. She paused. But if I adopt you as my daughter, your status will be sufficient to become an imperial prince's consort. With the status of the Grand Princess's adopted daughter, His Majesty readily approved my marriage to Prince Enz. However, the Crown Prince had not yet married, and the Grand Princess firmly refused to announce the arrangement. Thus, the engagement became a secret. Apart from His Majesty, only the Grand Princess's residence and Prince's residence knew of it. Before Li Xuan had recovered from his initial wound, he forced himself to visit the Lin residence because of the bamboo joint hairpin and clear my elder sister's name. In the end, he failed to preserve her reputation, damaged his own health again. By the 6th month, a single drenching in the rain gave him a severe chill. His fever did not recede, and his condition worsened by the day. The imperial physicians searched through every medical text, but found no effective prescription. Li Xuan's illness had begun as an ordinary chill. Because his old injury had never fully healed, the chill aggravated it, and the two conditions developed into a serious lung illness. The deputy director of the Imperial Medical Bureau was an elderly physician who had served 2 raisins. He studied Li Xuan's records so anxiously that he tugged several strands from his beard. In the end, the memorial he submitted contained only 4 words: "Leave it to heaven." When the news reached Prince En's residence, I was drinking tea in a side hall of the Grand Princess's residence. Princess Rong'an had recently obtained a pair of white parrots and was enthusiastically teaching me how to coax them into speaking. Just then, hurried footsteps sounded outside. My close maid, Lutan, lifted the curtain, entered, and whispered several words beside my ear. The teacup in my hand tilted slightly. Several drops of hot tea splashed onto my skirt and spread into dark stains. What happened? The Grand Princess turned her head toward me. I set down the cup, rose, and smiled.
Congratulations.
Your happy occasion is approaching. In the end, Li Xuan did not survive the winter of the 18th year of Yuanhe. When his condition became critical, he sent someone to summon me. Instead, he learned that I had already become princess consort, and I deliberately delayed and refused to see him one final time. There would have been no point. Even if I went, he would only repeat the same words, that he had been reborn, and that I had also been reborn. Life was mysterious and unpredictable. Unless I held absolute certainty, I would never tell anyone that I had returned from a previous life, even if that person was about to die still. I was very pleased. When my elder sister and Li Xuan died, both carried regret from the previous life in their hearts. There was also the child who was never born in this life. In my previous life, my elder sister deceived him, while Li Xuan coaxed the child away until he accepted an enemy as his mother. In this life, I fulfilled his wishes by sparing him the burden of coming into this world again. If he truly loved his imperial father and his aunt Qingfu, then he could reunite with them in the afterlife in another life. They could again become a family of 3. As for me, I became princess consort. With the Grand Princess's support, Prince En ascended the throne, and I naturally became empress. I gave birth to the crown prince. From then onward, I devoted myself to managing the harem for the emperor and caring for the beauties and consorts newly selected to enter the palace. When the crown prince turned 8, the emperor died unexpectedly in the chambers of Beauty Su. After a brief examination, the deputy director of the Imperial Medical Bureau concluded that the emperor had suffered a sudden fatal collapse during intimacy. The ruler of an entire empire had died in a woman's bed. If the truth spread, how could the imperial family face the realm? Beauty Su was beaten to death with rods. The court publicly announced that His Majesty had died after a grave illness and concealed the entire incident. I became the youngest Empress Dowager in the history of the dynasty. Bells rang from the Hall of Supreme Harmony, 3 long peals and 2 short ones. The ceremonial signal that a new emperor had ascended. I sat on a red sandalwood couch in Fengyi Palace. My fingertips lightly traced the cloud patterns on a gilded brazier. The charcoal inside was nearly spent, but had not fully gone out, just like the wavering candle flames throughout the great hall. On the night the emperor drew his final breath, palace attendants knelt throughout the hall. No one dared breathe loudly, only the 8-year-old crown prince. Now the new emperor held my hand tightly. His palm was cold and wet with sweat. Imperial mother, why do the ministers keep staring at my crown? He raised his still childish face and looked at me. I reached up and adjusted the 12 strands of jade hanging from his ceremonial crown. The beads struck one another with a clear, delicate chime. They are not looking at the crown, I told him. They are looking at the person beneath it, wondering whether he can truly sit securely upon that throne. 3 days earlier, the Grand Princess's residence had sent a memorial of congratulations. Its language was deeply sincere, every character seemingly soaked with tears. It declared that the late emperor had died young, and the state needed a mature and enlightened sovereign. Since the new emperor was still a child, the Grand Princess wished to refuse all rewards, close her doors, worship the Buddha, and pray for the realm. I immediately ordered the palace eunuchs to make many copies of the memorial through the night, and distribute them to the 6 ministries and the 9 ministers. At the first court session the following morning, the Vice Minister of War was the first to submit a memorial requesting that the Empress Dowager rule as regent. Just as I had expected, the Grand Princess had grown old. She no longer wished to involve herself in government, and hoped only for peace and safety for her descendants. Now that she had stepped back and publicly displayed that attitude, the officials who always followed the prevailing wind naturally understood which way it was now blowing. At the first formal court after the new emperor's enthronement, I began ruling from behind the curtain. The curtain was strung with perfectly round top-quality South Sea pearls. It separated me from the officials in the hall and also concealed me from their probing gazes. Through a gap in the curtain, I saw the Vice Minister of War. Kneeling in the first row, he bowed very low, revealing an old scar on the back of his neck. He had received that wound years ago, when he served as my guard and intercepted a blade meant for me. Reporting to the Empress Dowager, his voice rang like a bronze bell. The late emperor died suddenly, and the foundation of the state is not yet secure. We humbly beg the Empress Dowager to govern from behind the curtain. When His Majesty reaches adulthood, the authority of government may be returned to him. The ministers echoed his request in unison. Granted, I answered calmly. After court, I went alone to the Imperial Ancestral Temple, where the late emperor's spirit tablet was enshrined. Sandalwood smoke curled through the air, blurring even the characters of his name. Sudden hurried footsteps sounded outside. The young emperor had come looking for me. He had run until sweat covered his forehead. In his hand he held a red plum branch that he said he had just broken from a tree in the imperial garden. He wanted to offer it before his imperial father's spirit tablet. I accepted the branch and placed it in a celadon vase on the altar. Several petals across the late emperor's tablet. Imperial mother, the child suddenly said. Last night I dreamed of imperial father. My hand paused briefly. Oh, what did he say? I do not remember. My son raised his head. His dark eyes were clear and innocent. I only remember that imperial father seemed to be crying. He said someone had harmed him. Wind entered the hall and made the candle flame sway. I smiled faintly. I had almost forgotten if I could return from another life. Then there was nothing strange about him appearing in a dream. It seemed prudent to invite an eminent monk to perform rites and suppress the restless spirits. It would be best if they were restrained so completely that they could never return through reincarnation. Only then would my heart be truly at peace. At the end of the long staircase, the great doors of Fengi Palace stood wide open. Palace attendants, who saw the imperial procession approaching from afar, knelt together. The hatred and regret of my previous life had passed away forever, with the moment Li Xuan closed his eyes in the winter of Yuanhe's 18th year. Now I no longer feared my elder sister stealing my position as empress, nor did I fear her stealing my child. Heaven had decreed that I was a phoenix, destined to spread my wings and soar beyond the highest heavens. As long as those golden wings remained, why should I fear wind or storm? Thank you for supporting Panda. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Your support helps us bring you more amazing stories. Now, let's begin story 2. I had worked as an administrative director for 10 years when I transmigrated into the legitimate eldest daughter of a marquis's household. Then I discovered that this world belonged to a triumphant heroine's story about a maid who rose from nothing. Protected by the heroine's halo, the maid succeeded at everything. She managed the household, ran the shops, organized disaster relief, and won everyone's approval. Even my own younger brother and fiancé became devoted second male leads who guarded her every step of the way. In the end, the senior maid became a legendary merchant woman known throughout the realm. As for the original owner of my body, she hated the heroine, acted spoiled and willful, and repeatedly drove herself toward ruin. Everyone abandoned her and she eventually died alone from illness in a remote side residence. After a long silence, my occupational instincts kicked in. Managing a household was simply a logistics support system. Running shops was supply chain management. Disaster relief was an emergency response plan. What a coincidence. You are the impossibly fortunate maid with a heroine's halo. I am an administrator trying to stay alive, and survival begins with rules. While the eldest young lady lay unconscious in bed, everyone in the Marquise household was holding a birthday banquet for a maid. She had been unconscious for 2 days, yet the estate remained perfectly calm. No one cared. Even the physician had been hired casually by a manager. By then, the eldest young lady had already lost the trust of everyone around her. Without saying it aloud, they all assumed her collapse was merely another scheme she had staged to frame someone. That was when I arrived in her body. This was a story centered on a powerful female lead, but I was not that female lead. The heroine was named Su Sin. She was a first-rank maid serving grandmother. She was careful, humble, calm, and clever. A single casual sentence from her could make everyone around her abandon their judgment, admire her, and submit to her from the bottom of their hearts. Through one conflict after another, the eldest young lady's loving grandmother, her stern but indulgent father, her beloved younger brother, and her childhood sweetheart, a fiancé who had placed third in the imperial examination, all broke with her one by one and sided with Su Sin. Later, supported by all of them, she managed the household and the shops, dominated the business world, and became the third princess confidante during a disaster relief effort. She obtained the right to supply the imperial household, established her own business, and began her journey toward becoming the greatest merchantwoman in the realm. The eldest young lady died alone in a remote residence. Snow fell heavily that day. The room was bitterly cold. Her eyes remained wide open as she murmured, "It was not supposed to be like this. It was not supposed to be like this." After entering this body, I was often overwhelmed by a grief that did not belong entirely to me. She might have been written as a vicious supporting character. But she had truly lived in this world. She had loved, and she had suffered. Perhaps, at the moment of death, she had finally seen the ending that had been arranged for her. When our consciousnesses merged, I felt her resolve clearly. It was quiet, absolute, and left no path of retreat. She had lost all hope and no longer wished to fight. But I did. That was the ending the story had assigned to her. It was not mine. When I entered grandmother's courtyard, the main room was packed with people and filled with laughter. Plates of fruit and pastries covered the tables, and gift boxes, large and small, had been stacked in one corner. Grandmother sat upright on the main couch, speaking affectionately to a graceful young woman seated to her left. That woman was Su Sin. My younger brother, Lu Yan, sat nearby watching her with shinsinzer. The moment I stepped inside, the lively atmosphere froze. When Lu Yan saw me, the color in his face changed slightly. He forced a smile. "It is good that you are awake." I ignored him, walked past him, and bowed to grandmother. Grandmother sighed before saying, "Wan Ning, you were at fault in the incident by the pond. I hope you have reflected properly over the last 2 days. Su Sin is capable and attentive in her service. Stop targeting her at every turn. You are the legitimate daughter of this household. You should behave like one." I looked at the grandmother who had once loved me more than anyone. My mother had died early, and the original eldest young lady had grown up at grandmother's knee. Grandmother had taught her to read and to keep accounts. She had once told her lovingly that although women were confined to the inner household, they were no weaker than men. Yet I had been unconscious for 2 days, and grandmother did not ask about my health. Her first words were a demand that I make amends to Su Sin. "Yes," I answered respectfully. "I will remember grandmother's instruction." Everyone in the room looked surprised. In the past, whenever something like this happened, the eldest young lady would either act spoiled or throw a tantrum. She would certainly make a scene. No one had expected her to accept the rebuke so obediently. Grandmother parted her lips, then stopped. It was as though she had prepared an entire lecture only to find that it no longer had anywhere to go. Lu Yan stared at me, clearly trying to determine what trick I was playing. My gaze shifted slowly to Su Sin. Every maid in Marco Louis' household was required to dress according to her rank. Su Sin alone wore a plain green dress and a simple wooden hairpin. She was not extraordinarily beautiful, but her quiet, elegant appearance gave her an aloof, unworldly air. "Did you arrange this?" I asked. Beside grandmother's main couch, there had originally been 2 armchairs on each side. To make room for the long table of fruit and pastries, all 4 chairs had been moved to the left. Su Sin was sitting in the first seat on that side. Lu Yan immediately jumped up. "Today is Su Shin's birthday. Grandmother granted her special permission. So you mean I should sit below her? What is wrong with that? I am sitting below her too." "That is because you have no self-respect." Lu Yan froze. His eyes widened, and his face flushed bright red. I looked at this younger brother, and memories belonging to the body surged through me. On the night their mother died, 9-year-old Wan Ning had held 6-year-old Lu Yan in the mourning hall. However long he cried, she stayed and comforted him. When he fell unconscious from measles, she kept watch beside him for 3 days and 3 nights. When he caused trouble and father had him whipped, she threw herself over him without hesitation. The scar on her back still ached whenever the weather turned damp. This was the brother she had protected with her life. Yet when she and Susin fell into the pond at the same time, he had not hesitated for even a moment before saving Susin first. "You are always like this," Lu Yan said in a restrained voice, his tone full of disappointment and disgust. "Are you not simply angry because I did not save you first that day? But was Susin not pushed into the water by you? Was she not the more innocent and wronged one? You were unconscious for 2 days, but who knows whether even that was another trick to frame her." "Second young master, please stop." Susin rose gracefully. After speaking softly to Lu Yan, she looked at me with bright black eyes, neither flinching nor avoiding my gaze. "The eldest young lady is right. This seating arrangement does not conform to the rules. Old Madam merely made an exception because today is my birthday. I overstepped." Her words were reasonable, composed, and neither servile nor arrogant. She appeared to accept responsibility while also using grandmother as a shield. After speaking, she lifted her chin, walked to the farthest corner of the room, and stood there quietly, displaying perfect indifference to favor or humiliation. Lu Yan glared at me. Grandmother sighed heavily. I acted as though I noticed nothing and sat down on the left. At that moment, several managers hurried in through the door. As soon as they entered, they all dropped to their knees. Grandmother frowned. "What happened?" Steward Joe, who oversaw the warehouse, stammered out his report. Father would soon leave for a hunting expedition, and had ordered the servants to prepare his riding clothes in advance. When they opened the warehouse, they discovered that many bolts of silk, brocade garments, and other fine clothing had developed tiny insect holes. A number of valuable pieces had been ruined. Grandmother was furious. "A pack of useless fools! You cannot even protect a few garments." The managers bowed until their foreheads touched the floor in panic. Steward Joe turned to Susin with a pleading look. Susin lowered her eyes and smiled faintly. As everyone expected, she spoke. "Old Madam, please calm your anger. I may have found the cause. Allow me to inspect the warehouse with Steward Joe." Grandmother's expression eased, and she nodded. Less than half an incense stick later, Susin returned. She stood gracefully in the center of the hall and reported calmly, "Old Madam, the wardrobes have been kept closed for too long. Moisture accumulated inside, allowing cloth-eating insects to breed. I have ordered all the garments to be taken outside and aired in the sun. I also had dried peppercorn scattered inside and moisture-absorbing charcoal sachets hung in the cabinets. That should kill all the insects." The entire room relaxed. Several senior managers praised her sincerely. "Miss Susin is truly capable. We guard the warehouse every day, yet the moment something happens we lose our heads. None of us considered the matter as carefully as she did. Small details reveal true ability. She is so young, yet her judgment already surpasses ours. We have no choice but to admire her." Grandmother was delighted. She called Susin over, took her hand, and said affectionately, "I knew you were reliable. 10 managers together are not as attentive as you. From now on, you must help me carry more of the household's burdens." Susin remained humble and did not claim the credit. She smiled softly. "I was merely fortunate enough to notice a few clues. The managers labor every day and deserve the greater credit. Why not raise their monthly wages as recognition of their hard work?" Grandmother agreed immediately. The managers' eyes reddened with gratitude. They repeatedly thanked Susin and old Madame Lu. Lu Yan watched Susin without blinking, unable to hide his admiration. The room returned to perfect harmony. I gave a quiet laugh. The harmonious atmosphere stopped at once. Every pair of eyes turned toward me. "What are you trying to do now?" Lu Yan asked coldly, his voice thick with impatience. Grandmother pressed her lips together, clearly displeased. I looked at Susin and asked casually, "When you said you would kill the insects, did you mean this year's insects or next year's insects?" A trace of restraint appeared on Susin's face. She lifted her chin slightly. "Eldest young lady, naturally I meant this year's insects." I nodded. "Then why did the insects appear this year? Did they appear last year? Will they return next year? Was there more rain this year, or did the warehouse staff neglect their work? Is your method only a temporary remedy, or will it become a fixed procedure? If it becomes a fixed procedure, when will the garments be aired? How many times? Who will be responsible? And what happens if they fail to do it? I fired off the questions without giving her room to breathe. Suzine froze. For an instant, her bright black eyes went blank. Everyone else in the room was equally stunned. I lifted my teacup, took a sip, and said slowly, "If you cannot answer those questions, then even if you kill this year's insects, next year's insects are already on the way. An infestation is not difficult to remedy. The real problem is years of laziness and neglect. The garments were not aired when the seasons changed, and the wardrobes were never ventilated. Yet instead of investigating responsibility, you proposed rewarding the very people who failed in their duties. That wins their gratitude and their praise, but does it solve the problem? If it does not, then are you not using the Liu household's money to purchase personal goodwill?" Su Xin's expression stiffened, but she quickly recovered. "I did no such thing," she said firmly. "I swear to heaven that everything I have done was for the Liu household and to ease old Madame's burden." Her final words trembled slightly, as though she had suffered an enormous injustice. I knew this tactic too well. Do not discuss the problem, discuss your hard work. Do not discuss the system, discuss your loyalty. The moment the conversation is raised to that level, the person asking questions appears cold and cruel. As expected, Luyan shot to his feet. Su Xin found the method. "Suzine killed the insects. What use is it for you to sit there and criticize her?" "Idiot," I thought. Grandmother spoke as well. Her voice was not loud, but it carried the authority of someone who had ruled the household for many years. "Then tell us what should be done." I set my teacup down. It struck the table with a crisp sound. After looking across the managers' faces, I said, "New rules will take effect today. Clothing for the 4 seasons will be stored by category. Designated staff will air it regularly. Ventilation and moisture removal will be recorded in a monthly ledger, and every step will have a clearly assigned person responsible for execution. The warehouse manager will bear primary accountability. Within 3 days, you will produce a complete warehouse management policy and a separate disciplinary policy for dereliction of duty. Anyone who fails in their responsibilities will be punished severely." The room fell silent. Su Xin's eyes darkened, making her thoughts impossible to read. After a moment, Steward Zhou said with difficulty, "Eldest young lady, you have a noble status and may not understand the difficulties faced by servants. What you describe sounds easy, but carrying it out would be extremely troublesome." "Then you no longer need to be warehouse manager," I said. "You may become a gatekeeper in the outer courtyard, or you may pack your belongings and leave. Choose one." Steward Zhou stiffened and instinctively turned to Su Xin. "Miss Su Xin?" I laughed because the situation was genuinely absurd. A manager was defying the legitimate eldest daughter of the household, then turning to a maid for help, and no one in the room seemed to find that strange. "Why are you asking her? Do you truly believe that in Marquis Liu's household, the words of its legitimate daughter carry less weight than those of a maid?" Steward Zhou's face went white. "Of course not. Eldest young lady, please calm your anger." I ignored him and looked at the youngest manager standing at the edge of the group. "Do you believe it can be done?" She was the only person who had remained hesitant while the others praised Su Xin. She had not joined in when Su Xin proposed rewarding them. The young manager paused to think, then answered honestly, "Yes, regular airing, ventilation, and moisture removal are already part of a warehouse manager's duties. In the past, we relied on experience and memory, and there were no records to check, so omissions happened frequently. What the eldest young lady proposes may be troublesome at first, but once everyone knows their own responsibility, it will actually save work. But if we do this, your monthly wages will not be raised," I said with a smile. She answered frankly, "A wage increase would certainly be welcome, but if a larger failure occurs next time, none of us could bear the responsibility. That would be far more troublesome." The atmosphere fell silent. Su Xin still stood there smiling, poised and dignified, but the faster rhythm of her blinking revealed a subtle change. Several people began to look thoughtful. Grandmother narrowed her eyes, like the surface of a deep pool suddenly rippling beneath a breeze. Luyan's expression shifted several times. He seemed eager to argue, yet could not find a flaw in what I had said. I looked at everyone in the room and understood the truth clearly. They were not incapable of understanding these principles. But under the heroine's halo, whenever Su Xin spoke, everyone instinctively believed her words were the most correct, her suggestion the best, and her motives the kindest. The original eldest young lady had tried both softness and force. She had cried, pleaded, made scenes, and even sworn publicly while holding her mother's keepsakes. None of it had worked. The angrier she became, the more innocent Su Xin appeared. The more she lost control, the more composed Su Xin seemed. Those were the fixed rules and main plot of the story. They could not be shaken through direct confrontation. The eldest young lady had not understood that. She could not understand why nothing she did changed anyone's mind. That was why her ending had been so miserable. To win, I had to step outside the story's frame. A heroine depended on dazzling moments. I had spent 10 years in administration. Administrators never fought for dazzling moments. We did one thing: we placed every dazzling moment under the restraint of a system. If the heroine's rise was destined to be built on the bones of the vicious supporting character, then I would pierce that heroine's halo one layer at a time. The young manager's name was Chung Yan. She worked efficiently and soon presented me with 2 warehouse policy booklets. The clauses were clear, responsibilities were distinct, and every tiny character had been written neatly. I sat in a pavilion beside the artificial hill, eating pastries while reading the draft in the cool breeze. Add a signature column to the airing record, I said, and another column for the person who checks the work. Execution is execution. Supervision is supervision. Those 2 lines cannot be controlled by the same person. Chung Yan froze for a moment, then looked at me with admiration. That way, every action can be verified, and supervision will be real rather than merely spoken of. Eldest young lady, you truly considered everything. Of course I had. I may not have written 1,000 rules and procedures in my previous life, but I had certainly written hundreds. The administrative habits of leaving evidence, assigning responsibility, and closing every process loop had long been carved into my bones. Chung Yan understood a point as soon as I explained it. She reminded me of my former administrative assistant. A burst of shouting suddenly came from the distance. The pavilion stood on high ground with an open view, so the disturbance in the garden was easy to see. 2 older women were cursing and fighting beside the hanging flower gate. One had scraped her forehead, and the other's arm was bleeding. A crowd of maids and young servants surrounded them, yet no one could separate them. Some shouted, "Quickly, invite Miss Su-sin." Not long afterward, Su-sin arrived with a group of people around her. Her expression was calm and her steps steady. Her plain skirt emphasized her slender waist, and the same simple wooden hairpin remained in her hair. She stood at the center of the crowd and first asked what had happened. The 2 kitchen women each accused the other of taking the newly issued osmanthus honey. One said the other had secretly used it. The other insisted the first had hidden it away. Each woman stuck to her own story and refused to yield. After listening, Su-sin thought for a moment and raised her voice. There is no clear evidence of who took it, and further arguing will solve nothing. Let this matter end here. The 2 of you must make peace and may not continue resenting each other. Master has guests today, and fighting inside the estate was improper. Each of you will lose 1 month's wages as a warning to everyone else. Xiao Cui's, send the gatekeeper for a physician immediately. The cost of treating their injuries will be deducted from my own monthly allowance. Everyone watching nodded repeatedly. They praised her for combining mercy with authority and for handling the matter fairly without favoring either side. Excellent, excellent, excellent. Applause came from behind a bank of flowers. Several young noblemen strolled out, waving folding fans. I have long heard that the Liu household has a maid who can manage an estate and its finances, whose bearing surpasses that of many noble young ladies. One of them said, "Today I have seen it for myself." The rumors did not exaggerate. Another laughed. Her talent for business is even more remarkable. A few words from her once solved a crisis affecting dozens of Liu family shops. Master Liu brings her to every merchant guild meeting in the city. She is an extraordinary woman. A young man surnamed Chen smiled. I wonder whether Master Liu would be willing to release her. If he is, I would gladly spend 1,000 pieces of gold to take her into my household. I would be willing as well, another said. Su-sin stepped forward and bowed properly. Young masters, you flatter me. Although Su-sin is only a maid, I still respect myself. Since childhood, I have sworn that I would rather become a common man's wife than a nobleman's concubine. Please do not make me the subject of your jokes. As she straightened, her foot slipped. Just as she was about to fall, an arm caught her firmly around the waist. Watch your step, Su-sin. Thank you, young Master Pei. The man who caught her was my fiancé, Pei Jingyuan. He wore a white brocade robe that day. Among the other young noblemen, his gentle refinement and tall figure stood out. The hand supporting Su-sin paused for an instant before he slowly withdrew it. Su-sin lowered her head, exposing the pale curve of her neck. I sat in the pavilion and watched the scene in silence. Wan Ning and Pei Jingyuan had been childhood sweethearts. Their relationship had once been warm and intimate. He knew every preference she had. He wore the embroidered pouch she made every day. The first thing he did after placing third in the imperial examination was visit the Lu residence to ask for her hand. Before leaving the capital on official business, he had secretly gone beneath her window, talked with her for the entire night, and departed only when he had no choice. Then Su Xin's entered the household 3 years earlier, and everything changed. Whenever Pei Jingyuan visited Wan Ning, he happened to witness one of Su Xin's dazzling moments. Later, he saw the old red cord around Su Xin's wrist and recognized her as the little girl who had once given him 2 steamed buns when he became lost as a child. After that, his gaze always drifted toward her. Whenever Wan Ning and Su Xin became embroiled in an irreconcilable dispute, he defended Su Xin. Then he would look at Wan Ning with disappointment and ask why she had become increasingly cruel and willful. In the end, like everyone else in the Lu family, he stood on Su Xin's side. Someone below finally noticed me and called, "Eldest young lady." Everyone looked up at once. The shy smile on Su Xin's face stiffened. Pei Jingyuan's brow creased. The other young nobleman looked embarrassed. I wiped my hands with a damp cloth, rose, and descended the stone steps of the artificial hill. Cheng Yan followed 1 step behind me, holding the policy booklets. When I reached level ground and walked toward them, Pei Jingyuan instinctively shifted in front of Su Xin in a protective stance. Before I could speak, he said in a low voice, "Wan Ning, postponing the wedding was my own decision. It had nothing to do with Su Xin. If you want to make a scene, direct it at me." I glanced at him. On the day the eldest young lady fell into the pond, she had learned from father that Pei Jingyuan wanted to postpone their wedding. Soon afterward, she encountered Su Xin beside the pond and saw a wooden hairpin in Su Xin's hair. Wan Ning had once watched Pei Jingyuan carving that hairpin day and night. She had been secretly delighted, believing it was meant for her. Overwhelmed by grief and fury, she reached out to snatch it from Su Xin. During the struggle, both of them fell into the pond. When the eldest young lady finally sank, her eyes had remained open. She had believed Pei Jingyuan was her last ally. At some point beneath the water, she simply stopped struggling. "There is no need to postpone it," I said calmly. Pei Jingyuan frowned and sighed heavily. "Wan Ning, I know you are only saying this because you are angry," I interrupted him. "Third place laureate Pei Lu Wan Ning am ending our engagement." He froze as though he had not understood. A moment later, his eyes widened in disbelief. I ignored him and looked at Su Xin. She met my gaze calmly. Her eyes held composure, confidence, and a trace of condescending pride. I gave a faint smile. "When servants quarrel, you do not establish responsibility or determine right and wrong. You simply punish both sides equally and end the matter. Are you an expert at papering over every dispute?" Su Xin's expression shifted. Everyone fell silent. Cheng Yan pulled out her brush and booklet, ready to write. The young noblemen lightly waved their fans, clearly eager to watch the dispute. Pei Jingyuan closed his eyes briefly, stepped forward and pulled me aside. Lowering his voice, he spoke with strained patience. "Wan Ning, stop making trouble. You are only allowing outsiders to laugh at the legitimate young lady of this household. It will damage both your reputation and that of the Lu family. Let go of me." I frowned at his hand, my voice cold. He released me instinctively, shock crossing his face. Su Xin spoke with perfect courtesy. "Eldest young lady, servants are people too. If every matter must be pursued to its deepest root, it will inevitably chill their hearts." I punished both women equally so they would remember the lesson and live in harmony afterward. As for the physician's fee, I am paying it from my own allowance. Surely that cannot be wrong. She emphasized the final question, then smiled faintly, as though she felt helpless before an unreasonable young lady who could not be persuaded. Yet when she looked at me, her gaze burned, and a sharp edge hid beneath it. Clearly, she intended to recover the ground she had lost over the warehouse incident. Several young noblemen nodded. The servants did not dare speak, but many looked as though they agreed with her. "Of course it is wrong," I said coldly. "When you use your own money to grant favors, it appears generous, but it destroys the rules. With a single order to make peace line, you erase the possibility of theft and false accusation. The person who followed the rules receives the same punishment as the person who made the false accusation. That is what truly chills people's hearts." Su Xin's smile stiffened. "You appear fair, but you refuse to distinguish right from wrong. Today they fight over osmanthus honey. Tomorrow it will be a few pounds of meat. The day after that it will be charcoal. If every problem ends with everyone running to Miss Su Xin, then the estate's rules become decoration. Why keep them at all?" I looked around the crowd. "You only put out fires. You never investigate their source." Marcoux Lu's household contains more than 160 people, with thousands of items entering and leaving every day. It cannot operate because one person repeatedly appears to settle disputes and grant favors. It depends on clear authority and responsibility, workable procedures, and strict systems. Chung Yan's brush flew across the page. She turned to a new sheet and continued writing. Some people began to nod. One of the kitchen women involved in the fight looked increasingly aggrieved. I asked evenly, "Who supervises the kitchen?" A person stepped out of the crowd and bowed. "Investigate today's dispute yourself. If you cannot discover the truth, the chief steward will investigate. If the chief steward cannot discover it, the matter will be reported to the authorities." A jar of osmanthus honey is a small thing, but theft and false accusation concern the moral discipline of the Liu household. I will uncover the truth and use it as a warning to everyone. The moment I finished speaking, one of the kitchen women collapsed to the ground. Her whole body shook violently. She said nothing, but everyone understood. Susan pressed her lips together. Something seemed to fracture quietly inside the eyes that had always been calm and certain. "Chung Yan," I continued, "within 3 days, draft a management policy for kitchen supplies. Establish ledgers for purchasing and issuing materials. Test the policy for 1 month. If it runs smoothly, extend it to every courtyard, the gatehouse, the stables, and finally the entire estate. Every item entering or leaving must be recorded." The courtyard fell completely silent. People looked confused and yet enlightened, as though a road they had once believed broad had suddenly opened into a much wider one. The young noblemen had stopped waving their fans. The contempt had disappeared from their eyes. Pei Jingyuan stood motionless, his expression dazed. He appeared to be thinking or remembering something. I turned and left. Chung Yan hurried after me with the booklets in her arms. As soon as we rounded the garden path, we saw grandmother standing there with a group of maids behind her. She had clearly heard everything. Grandmother smiled at me affectionately. "Wan Ning, I suddenly remembered how you used to cling to me and ask me to walk in the garden with you. You said walking more would be good for my health. These last 2 years, it seems the two of us have not been close like that for a long time. Fortunately, there is still plenty of time ahead. We will have many more opportunities." Her expression was gentle, as though she had returned to the past. I bowed respectfully. Inside, I thought, there will be no more opportunities. Over the following days, the atmosphere in the Liu household changed quietly. The servants still looked cautious when they saw me, but when they lowered their heads and called me eldest young lady, there was more sincere respect in their voices. When I visited grandmother, she no longer ignored me or began with a lecture. Instead, she held my hand and spoke about the peonies blooming in the garden, or the sugar figurines she had specially ordered from the western part of the city because they were my favorite. When I did not see Susan beside her, I smiled and asked about her. Grandmother sighed. "I transferred her to the outer courtyard. For the last 2 years, you and I became estranged because of her. I should have moved her away long ago. Whatever the reason, I should have protected you. We are grandmother and granddaughter by blood." Liu Yan believed I had persuaded grandmother to transfer Susan. He stormed over to question me, only to be rebuked severely. "Your elder sister is the legitimate young lady of this household," grandmother snapped. "You have lost your senses if you are rude to her for the sake of a maid." I responded to grandmother's renewed affection with perfect courtesy. I behaved exactly as a junior should. Yet when I sat beside her, my posture remained straight. When she held my hand, I did not hold hers in return. After all, I was not Luan Ning. I had inherited her memories, but not her emotions. And in those memories, what remained most vivid was grandmother's favoritism and affection towards Suxin during the last few years, and her cold expression whenever she rebuked Luan Ning with disappointment. Grandmother sensed my distance. Sometimes she stopped in the middle of speaking and looked at me before sighing softly. "Wan Ning, grandmother has seen how much you have changed lately and knows you must have worked hard in private. Grandmother is old and sometimes becomes confused. I was too harsh with you before. Do not take it to heart," I answered obediently. By the time I left her courtyard, my heart remained entirely calm. The heroine and the vicious supporting character clearly rose and fell in inverse proportion. When the heroine's halo became less brilliant, the supporting character no longer appeared so vicious. But this was only a small crack in Susan's halo. To destroy it completely, I still had to proceed one step at a time. Several days later, I reviewed policy drafts in the courtyard. Chung Yan was indeed capable. She thought carefully and learned quickly. After I taught her to divide the text into sections and numbered clauses, the documents became much easier to read. Administrative work and personnel management were inseparable, so I also began teaching her to draw an organizational chart. Who managed whom? Who reported to whom? I drew boxes around the positions and connected them with lines. The structure became clear at a glance. Chung Yan watched with shining eyes and studied every detail. I had just set down my brush when I saw a procession entering through the second gate. Su Xin wore a practical, narrow-sleeved jacket and walked beside father. Behind them came the chief steward and a large group of attendants. She tilted her head slightly to listen to father and occasionally answered him, calm and self-possessed. This was the family's monthly shop inspection. My father, Lu Chengshan, had inherited the marquisate and held only a nominal position at court. Most of his energy was devoted to the family's commercial holdings. Under father's management were 72 shops of various sizes, dealing in silk and cloth, rice and grain, general goods, medicinal herbs, spices, and many other products. 2 years earlier, a shipment of expensive silk had failed to sell and remained in storage for months. While everyone was at a loss, Su Xin happened to enter father's study under grandmother's order to deliver his medicine. She listened quietly, then boldly suggested selling the silk by the length instead of only by the full bolt. Wealthy households may not buy an entire bolt, she adds, but smaller households can still afford a few feet. That single suggestion provided a new direction, and most of the unsold silk was soon cleared. After that, father called Su Xin into his study whenever the shopkeepers gathered for their monthly meeting. He also brought her on every inspection tour. She could often identify a problem with a single remark, and even shopkeepers, with more than 20 years of experience, admired her sincerely. According to the original story, father would die from illness 3 years later. Before his death, he would place the keys to all the shops in Su Xin's hands in front of everyone and say, "I leave the Lu family businesses in your hands." Su Xin would kneel beside his bed, weeping. "Master Lu, you recognized and cultivated me. I will devote everything I have to repaying your kindness." What a touching tale of a talented protégé finally finding a patron who recognized her worth. It would have been even more touching if those 72 shops had not been the dowry my mother left me. A heroine always had another road available. When her path through the inner household narrowed, she simply walked outside, where the entire capital became her stage. But no matter how far she traveled or how high she flew, she had no right to step on another person's bones. Everything that belonged to me had to be taken back. On a bright sunny day, I took Chung Yan to the main Lu family shop and went upstairs to a private room. Father and several senior shopkeepers were seated around a large round table discussing business. Worry showed on every face. Su Xin was the only woman in the room. She sat upright with a cup of tea before her, composed and confident, displaying more of a leader's bearing than the experienced shopkeepers around her. Pei Jingyuan was also present. His family had originally belonged to the city's merchant class, and had long conducted business with the Lu household. During the last 2 years he had begun taking over part of his own family's enterprise. After the incident in the garden, he had not formally approached father to cancel the engagement. Perhaps he believed I had spoken in anger. Perhaps he still had not decided what he wanted. It did not matter. If he refused to raise the matter, I would. When I entered, father frowned. "Wan Ning, why are you here instead of staying at home?" I smiled. "I came to inspect my shops." Quiet laughter spread around the table. The shopkeepers shook their heads, though my status prevented them from speaking openly. Pei Jingyuan looked at me with a complicated expression. Su Xin had initially appeared guarded, but after hearing my answer, the tension at the corners of her mouth eased. A faint smile appeared. "Eldest young lady," she said sincerely, "a shop is not like the inner household. Its affairs contain many twists and turns that you probably would not enjoy hearing. A shipment of new fabric recently arrived downstairs. Why not go choose something you like?" Father waved at me, exhausted and impatient. "We are discussing business. Listen to Su Xin and go downstairs." I acted as though I had not heard him. I walked to an empty place at the table, sat down and said leisurely, "All commercial property under the Lu household originated in mother's dowry. Before she died she left clear instructions. The marquisate would pass to Lu Yan while her dowry would belong to me. The deeds to all 72 Lu family shops bear my name as their owner." I looked around the room and smiled. "So, may I inspect my own shops?" The moment I finished, the room became silent. Embarrassment appeared on the senior shopkeepers' faces. During the last few years I had rarely entered the shops. Even when I did, I selected a few products and left. They appeared to have forgotten that I was their true owner. Su Xin's face tightened. She bit her lip before recovering her composure. Pei Jingyuan looked at me in astonishment again. Father's expression changed several times. Finally, he said, "Since you are here, listen properly. Do not speak carelessly about matters you do not understand. I listened for a while and soon understood the problem. A cloth house that had worked with the Liu family for years had delivered a large shipment with uneven colors and inconsistent quality. Although the supplier had paid compensation according to the agreement, the quantity was so large that much of the Liu family's money remained tied up in substandard stock. The senior shopkeepers were considering selling it at a discount to small workshops or attempting to dye it again, but they had not reached a decision. Susin thought for a moment and said, selling at a discount would produce the greatest loss, while dyeing it again would require too much labor. In my opinion, we should use this inferior batch as a free gift with other fabrics. First, that clears the inventory. Second, it promotes our better cloth. Third, it wins the goodwill of customers. We lose a small amount but protect the larger profit. The shopkeeper's eyes brightened, and they nodded. Miss Susin's method is excellent. It achieves 3 goals at once. The loss can be recovered through sales of the other fabrics. She has turned a difficulty into an advantage. Brilliant. Pei Jingyuan also looked at Susin with open appreciation. She met his eyes, smiled and lowered her head. Father's expression relaxed. Since everyone agrees then, I tilted my head and interrupted with a smile. How can everyone agree when I have not agreed yet? Father frowned. Wan Ning, what do you have to say? I ran my fingers lightly over the account ledger and asked unhurriedly, what is the name of the cloth house that delivered the goods? Fengji Cloth House. A shopkeeper answered. Did Fengji's goods have problems last year? One batch was short in length. We discovered it and returned the goods quickly. And after the return? Was the supplier punished? Did we switch to another supplier? Did we compare prices with other suppliers? Did we establish a clear inspection standard for future deliveries? No one answered. I placed my teacup down. You returned the goods, received compensation, and then accepted the next shipment. Last year the cloth was short. This year the color is uneven. What will happen next year? If problems occur every year and the goods are repeatedly turned into free gifts, are we conducting business or specializing in giveaways? I opened the old records. Over the last 2 years, the 3 cloth houses Fengji, Guangling, and Chen have cost us more than 900 pieces of silver because of color differences and inferior quality. That would have been enough to open 2 additional branches. Not a sound could be heard. Several shopkeepers took out handkerchiefs and wiped the sweat from their foreheads. Father looked at me and suddenly said, discovering a problem without solving it is a merchant's greatest mistake. Do you remember those words? I lowered my eyes. Naturally, after Mother died, Father had worked hard to fulfill her final wishes by teaching me to examine accounts and manage shops. That was what he had said to me most often. After Susin appeared, he never spoke to me about the shops again. I made a small gesture. Chung Yan stepped forward holding several booklets. The eldest young lady and I have drafted a supplier management system for all 72 Liu family shops. She announced clearly. This is the general policy. This is the supplier admission policy. This is the supplier grading policy. This is the procurement contract template, and this is the goods inspection standard. Each time she named a booklet, she placed it on the table. The senior shopkeepers hesitated for a moment, then picked them up and began reading. Father glanced at me before taking one. Pei Jingyuan also reached for a copy. The room became extremely quiet, filled only with the sound of turning pages. When the shopkeepers finally set the booklets down, they exchanged looks of shock and sudden understanding. They had spent decades struggling through the realities of trade. One glance was enough for them to determine whether the policies were useful. The eldest, shopkeeper Chu, said in a low voice, if we had possessed these booklets several years earlier, how could we have suffered the same losses year after year? Father had not yet lifted his head. He read more slowly than everyone else. After finishing one booklet, he took another. When he had finished the final one, he closed it but did not put it down. His gaze moved slowly toward me. Good, good, he said in a deep voice. Only 2 words, but everyone present understood their weight. Susin sat with her lips pressed tightly together. The confidence and pride she had accumulated over the last 2 years seemed to disappear inch by inch. She was skilled at finding one clever path out of a crisis. What she did not understand was that the real solution was never a single clever idea. It was an entire system of rules. As I descended the stairs, footsteps sounded behind me. Wan Ning, Pei Jingyuan called. I did not stop. After a moment of silence, he asked quietly, could I borrow those booklets and study them? Asked Chung Yan. His gaze wavered. His voice sounded desolate. Wan Ning, you were not like this before. I lifted my head and looked at him without expression. You were not like this before either. In the dim corner of the staircase, his expression turned grim, as though someone had slapped him full across the face. The policies were implemented one after another. Compared with my previous life, where every policy required layers of approval, conflict between departments, and endless rounds of communication, implementation in Marcus Lewis' household was much simpler. Whenever someone refused to comply, acted as a troublemaker, or threatened to walk off the job, I gave that person two choices: follow the policy or collect the wages owed and leave. 2 months later, the changes became visible. Urgent incidents that had once erupted every few days decreased by more than half. Arguments and attempts to shift blame among the servants also subsided. The issue and use of supplies were recorded in ledgers. When the accounts were reconciled at the end of the month, the household had saved more than 200 pieces of silver compared with the same period the previous year. I ordered Chung Yan to take half of those savings and distribute them as bonuses to the people who had performed well. The rewards strengthened everyone's motivation even further. The same thing happened in the family businesses. Once the supplier policies took effect, several long-established merchants who had passed inferior goods as quality products were immediately exposed. New suppliers signed the revised contracts and no longer had room to evade responsibility. The supply chain stabilized, quality was guaranteed, accounts became clear. The managers of the 72 shops progressed from watching cautious to enjoying the results. One after another, they expressed their support. The dazzling moments Susin had once created through clever ideas and ingenuity no longer appeared. Many problems were now prevented at the policy level before they had a chance to become crises. As those systems steadily expanded, the heroinous halo around Sushin gradually dimmed. One day in the garden, I happened to see Sushin and Pei Jingyuan speaking beneath a flowered wall. Sushin's eyes were red, and she looked exhausted. "I do not want to remain in Marca Lu's household," she said. Her voice was weary, and carried a note of bitter ridicule. In the end, status is still used to suppress people. One person's strength cannot change this world. "Young Master Pei, can you take me away?" She looked at him with the desperation of someone making her final wager. Pei Jingyuan remained silent for a long moment before speaking softly. "Susin, if you want to leave the Lu household and find a suitable position elsewhere, I can certainly help you." "What did you say?" Susin's eyes widened, as though she could not believe what she had heard. Pei Jingyuan stood with his hands lowered and looked into the distance. "I am grateful for the kindness you showed me when we were children. And because you are intelligent and capable, there were many times when I wanted to help you without realizing it. But Wan Ning is angry with me. She must be very, very angry to have spoken of ending our engagement. For the first time, I understand what it means for the heart to feel as though it has been cut open. Susin, if anything I did caused you to misunderstand, I apologize." "Misunderstand?" Susin laughed coldly. She suddenly ripped the wooden hairpin from her hair and threw it hard at his feet. "I said I wished to receive a hand-carved hairpin on my birthday and you gave me this. I said that after you married the eldest young lady, we would meet less often, and you asked Master Lu to postpone the wedding. You call all of that a misunderstanding?" Pei Jingyuan closed his eyes and lowered his head. "I wronged you. If you want money, name the amount." A sharp slap sounded. Susin had struck him across the face. Pei Jingyuan touched his cheek and stared at her in disbelief. Even I nearly failed to maintain my composure. Then I considered it and found the event perfectly reasonable. Slapping a man was practically one of a heroine's required skills. Susin's eyes filled with tears. "Pei Jingyuan, how dare you humiliate me like this? If I desired money and status, Lu Yan follows me every day like a dog. I would have accepted him long ago. Why would I put myself through this?" "What did you say?" Lu Yan stepped out from behind the flowers, his eyes wide. "Who did you say was like a dog?" Susin's face turned white. She hurried forward and grabbed his hand, her voice trembling. "Second young Master Lu, that is not what I meant. I spoke recklessly because I was angry." Lu Yan tore his hand away with such force that she staggered. His face went livid. "Who did you say was like a dog?" Susin opened her mouth but no answer came. At the same time, Pei Jingyuan's cold voice sounded behind her. "Miss Susin, let today slap you the 2 buns you gave me years ago. You and I are even now." Susin stood between them, looking left and right. Helplessness and fear spread slowly across her face. I stood behind the wisteria trellis and could not hold back a laugh. I had nearly forgotten that a heroine did not only possess dazzling scenes, she also had to endure dramatic confrontations between the men around her. Perfectly reasonable. One day, Susin suddenly disappeared. There had been no warning. No, there had been a warning. The previous day, when I returned from visiting grandmother, Su-Sin blocked my path. She stared at me with bloodshot eyes. Eldest young lady, why do you make things difficult for me at every turn? I stopped and tilted my head. Where have I made things difficult for you? She raised her chin. You and I both know the truth. During these last few months, you appeared to have stopped behaving like a spoiled young lady. In reality, you merely changed your methods. Quietly and without showing your hand, you took everything that belonged to me one piece at a time. The accusation was so absurd that I almost laughed. What did I take from you? The authority to manage Marquis Lu's household? The right to control the shops? The affection of grandmother and father? Or Pei Jingyuan's love? What connection did any of those things have to you in the first place? Su-Sin pressed her lips together and stared at me with red eyes, but she could not produce a single answer. Instead of satisfaction, I felt a trace of sorrow. Look at her. Even when something that had never belonged to her was taken away, she felt such resentment and refused to let go. How much pain, then, must the original eldest young lady have endured? Enough pain to give up everything. Su-Sin's disappearance was discussed in the Lu household for only 2 days. Then everything became calm again and no one mentioned her. The world did not stop because one person vanished, even when that person was supposedly heaven's chosen daughter. 3 months later, severe floods struck the south. Large numbers of refugees entered the capital. The third prince received an imperial order to mobilize the city's merchant houses for disaster relief. In the original story, Su-Sin would already have controlled the Lu family businesses by this point. She would represent them in the relief effort, win the third prince's admiration, and become his trusted female confidante. From there, she would establish her own enterprise, win the imperial supplier qualification, and begin the grandest stage of her rise as a legendary merchant woman. That was supposed to be one of the most important chapters in the book, but the situation had changed. Su-Sin had disappeared. I did not know whether this story of a powerful heroine had already ended or whether it would create another disturbance. I was not worried. Several days later, representatives of the capital's major merchant houses were ordered to gather in one place. I attended on behalf of the Lu businesses, with Cheng Yan accompanying me. The third prince sat in the principal seat, dressed in black brocade. His presence was imposing. A woman sat beside him. It was Su-Sin. After leaving the Lu household, she had encountered the third prince while he was traveling in disguise. The two had sat across from each other at an inn and discussed commerce. Impressed by her views, he had brought her into his service as an advisor. Now she held his command token and was acting on his behalf to organize the city's merchant houses for disaster relief. I understood at once. The main plot really was impossible to derail. Very well, let it come. Before everyone's eyes, Su-Sin rose gracefully. Her gaze rested on my face for an instant. Her eyes held sharpness, certainty, and a trace of satisfaction. She raised her voice. For this relief effort, each merchant house will contribute according to the goods it handles. Cloth merchants will donate cloth, grain merchants will donate grain, and apothecaries will donate medicine. All materials will be transported to Tenli Pavilion outside the city, where porridge kitchens and relief stations will be set up. Supplies will be distributed according to the number of people, and every action will be centrally directed and assigned by the imperial court. Her plan was clear and easy to understand. The third prince nodded slowly. Several shopkeepers also expressed agreement. Does anyone hold a different opinion? The third prince asked as he turned the thumb ring on his hand. I do, I said. Su-Sin smiled. Her expression contained the excitement of someone who had finally reached the moment she had been waiting for. She looked at me and spoke gently, though every word carried a thorn. Eldest young lady Lu, in Marca Lu's household, you were the young lady of the household, while I was only a servant. I could neither defeat you in argument nor compete with your status, but now I act under imperial command to assist with disaster relief. The lives of countless refugees are at stake. Should we not set aside our personal grievances? The third prince frowned. State your different opinion, he said coldly. I rose, bowed to him, and then turned to Su-Sin. My voice remained calm. Your plan appears complete, but it contains 3 fatal flaws. 12. First, you intend to concentrate every supply at Tenli Pavilion. That location has only one winding road. If the transport carts of every merchant house converge on a single point while thousands of refugees gather there as well, what will happen? The carts will be unable to enter. The goods will be unable to unload. The refugees will crowd together, creating the danger of panic and trampling. Your plan appears efficient, but it creates an enormous hidden risk. That is the first omission. Several shopkeepers with disaster relief experience nodded slightly. Second, you intend to distribute supplies according to the number of people. That appears fair, but it ignores differences between refugees. Can a strong adult man and an elderly person have identical needs? Some people will receive too little, while others will receive more than they can use. The imbalance may lead to fighting and looting among the refugees, creating a second wave of disorder. That is the second omission. S expression tightened. She stared at me without blinking. The final point is the most important. You considered only the refugees who have already arrived. Many more will continue entering the capital. Can the inventory of the merchant houses keep pace? How will public order be maintained? How will disease be prevented? What is your next stage plan? The hall became silent. The third prince's gaze changed from displeasure to thoughtfulness and then to gravity. He leaned forward and narrowed his eyes at me. Eldest young lady Lu, do you have a workable plan? I looked toward Cheng Yan. She drew a deep breath, walked to the center of the hall, straightened her back, and announced clearly, Your Highness, 2 months ago, when the first news of flooding in the south reached the capital, the Lu family businesses joined with 8 major merchant houses to create a disaster emergency response plan. It covers 5 areas: allocation of supplies, placement of refugees, epidemic prevention, maintenance of public order, and communication of information. Every merchant house now has a defined role and a responsible person. We have already conducted several simulations. Su Xin laughed coldly. You make it sound impressive, but it is only theory on paper. Without unified direction from the imperial court, how can you ensure that the merchant houses will not abandon their responsibilities when the critical moment comes? Without looking at her, I asked, Is the representative of the Wang merchant house present? A middle-aged man rose from among the seats. Present. We are responsible for rice, flour, grain, and cooking oil at the eastern reception point. I called for the Bode merchant house, whose representative reported responsibility for epidemic prevention, medicines, and physicians at the western reception point. I then called the Dong and Guangquan merchant houses. Their representative rose in turn and reported their assigned work and stored supplies. Finally, I looked at the third prince. Disaster relief is a serious matter. None of us dared to be careless. During the last month, we have conducted 3 field exercises to ensure that nothing would go wrong. The third prince remained silent for a long time. Then he rose slowly, swept his gaze across the room, and finally looked at me. He straightened his robes and bowed. Eldest young lady Lu, the refugees are suffering. I must trouble all of you to help them. Su Xin stood frozen, her face going livid. At the end of the meeting, she still insisted that the imperial court should establish one official relief center. She argued that only then would the refugees trust the court and praise the emperor's grace. After considering it, the third prince agreed. He assigned Tenli Pavilion to Suze and placed her in charge. Over the following days, waves of refugees entered the capital. The merchant houses followed our emergency plan. Grain remained available, medicine did not run out, people did not panic, and supplies were directed in an orderly way. The relief station managed by Su Xin at Tenli Pavilion also operated normally at first. Half a month later, however, a group of refugees far larger than expected arrived at once. To prevent disorder, Su Xin canceled the quarantine area. 2 days later, an epidemic broke out at the Tenli Pavilion reception point. Within 7 days, 15 people had died. After half a month, the number exceeded 100. When the news reached the palace, the emperor was furious and ordered a complete investigation. The third prince was implicated. Fortunately, every other relief point had operated smoothly. The refugees openly praised the court's arrangements, and songs of imperial gratitude were repeated through the streets and alleys. His merits offset his fault, so he escaped formal punishment and received only a severe reprimand. Su Xin was not as fortunate. The third prince did not protect her. Perhaps he tried, but in the face of more than 100 deaths, their supposed bond as confidants meant very little. The last time I saw Su Xin was in the imperial prison. Heavy snow fell that day, and the cell was bitterly cold. She wore thin clothing and sat in a corner with her hair loose around her. She murmured over and over, "This should not have happened. This should not have happened." Then she said, "That voice clearly told me I was the heroine. It said that as long as I chose someone to become the female supporting character, I could exchange for everything she possessed. This world is so unfair. Why did the eldest young lady have everything? Why did so many people love her? Why was I only a poor maid with no family? Did it not say that every measure of pain she suffered would strengthen my fortune? Why did it stop working? Why?" Understanding dawned on me. The heroine's halo had been built on plunder from the beginning. The original Lu Wanning lost because she was too deeply attached to her emotional bonds. Her pain became nourishment for Su Xin's fortune. I won because I recognized only the logic by which systems operated. I had no emotional attachment to any of them. How ridiculous. Extra chapter: grandmother sent someone to invite me every day. She held my hand and spoke endlessly about the past. Her aged eyes watched me as though waiting for the girl who would throw herself into her arms and act spoiled. I remained courteous and distant. I sat for exactly the time it took to drink 1 cup of tea, then left on schedule. Father transferred every Lu family business to me. While reading my policies, he sighed. If your mother were still alive and could see you now, she would be deeply comforted. His tone contained regret and an attempt to please me. I responded only to business and said nothing unnecessary. Lu Yan came specifically to apologize. He blocked my path, struggled for a long time, and finally said with a flushed face, "Sister, I was a complete bastard before. Hit me if you wish." I ignored him. Because of him, my back still ached. Once, when I passed his room, I heard him crying like a child inside. I found it irritating rather than moving. Pei Jingyuan came to Marquis Lu's manor every day. I had already ended the engagement, but he continued to come. When I refused to see him, he stood silently in the courtyard until people from his own residence arrived to take him home. Sometimes he entered cautiously and invented an excuse to ask me about institutional design. "Ask Chengyan," I would say. Chengyan stood nearby, eyes lowered, and did not dare answer a single word. When I looked at all these people, I found them absurd. When someone had loved them with her whole heart, they had treated her as something worthless to be cast aside. Now that the person before them felt nothing, each of them wanted to offer up a sincere heart in exchange. How ridiculous. I remembered the ending of the original book. In the original book, the eldest young lady had been ordered to remain in seclusion for 2 days. When she died alone in the remote residence, the rest of the household was holding a magnificent banquet to celebrate grandmother's adoption of Su Xin as an honorary granddaughter. Her body was not discovered until 2 days after her death, and she had died in a pitiful state. I had no right to forgive them. The person who could have spoken forgiveness had fallen silent forever. Once, when I became too impatient, I simply told them, "I am not Lu Wanning." They believed I was speaking in anger and only sighed quietly. Later, grandmother's asthma returned. I said, "If the original eldest young lady were still here, she would go to the temple to pray for you. On the way, she would meet a traveling physician, receive a folk remedy, and cure your asthma. Unfortunately, she is gone, and the remedy will never reach you. I am afraid you will suffer from this illness every moment for the rest of your life." I sighed with apparent pity. Grandmother looked at me in terror. After father surrendered control of the businesses, he exercised every day. He said to me gently, "I must keep myself strong and healthy and live another 20 years. I want to see you marry and stand behind you so no one can mistreat you." Out of kindness, I told him, "You have only 2 years left to live. Training or not training will make little difference." He stood frozen like a stone statue. Lu Yan came to confess his guilt again and again. Once, halfway through his apology, I lost patience. "You absolute idiot. Get lost." He remained where he was as though he had been slapped, looking thoroughly foolish. One day, Pei Jingyuan stood in the rain outside my courtyard until he was barely conscious. I happened to be leaving with Chengyan to inspect the shops. As I passed him, I merely glanced down and told Chengyan to summon a maid. I did not slow my steps. He lay on the soaked ground, his eyes half open and his expression empty. At last they understood that I was not their Wan Ning. I was not the Wan Ning who cried, acted spoiled, lost her temper and still loved them. Grandmother began weeping every day. Father seemed to age 10 years overnight. Lu Yan drank heavily every day. Pei Jingyuan abandoned his court position and his enormous family wealth, then left for the desert. No further news of him arrived. Not long afterward, I moved out of Marquis Louis Manor. I built a large residence in a beautiful place surrounded by mountains and rivers. On the hill behind it, I also built a grave for the original eldest young lady. Although the grave was empty, it was beautiful. On the day the azaleas bloomed most brightly, Chengyan came to see me. She told me that the third prince had been impressed by her performance during the disaster relief effort. She intended to enter public service. I nodded. It was natural that she would wish to become an official. Her expression was solemn, and light shone in her eyes. "Yes, I want to become an official," she said. "I want to become a very important one. The systems you taught me, procedures, authority and responsibility, and supervision, have made me understand that these are the foundation of governing and helping the people. Human behavior cannot be predicted, but a good system can create genuine checks, balances, and oversight. If I can apply what I learned to the imperial court and spread it throughout the realm, the people who benefit will not be limited to one marquis's household or a few dozen shops. The people of the entire realm will benefit. She stepped back, lifted the front of her robe and knelt. Bowing until her forehead touched the ground, she said, "Teacher, when I have achieved the vision in my heart, I will return to see you. I had always felt out of place in this world. Fortunately, the identity of the eldest young lady gave me both money and freedom. Aside from attending one shopkeeper's meeting each month, I lived comfortably and without constraint. Sometimes I went to sit beside Luanning's grave. The scenery there was beautiful, and green trees cast deep shade. I was her, and yet I was not her, but I was the only person who had ever truly understood her. Sometimes a breeze passed, and a willow branch brushed my shoulder. It felt as though, across time and space, the original eldest young lady was gently holding my hand, as though she were saying, 'Thank you, good night.'